all these illuminous speakers on the call. And we are very fortunate that we've already got 134 participants, 135, and the number is rising as I'm watching. So it's a great privilege to be hosting this MitKat APAC Resilience Symposium, where we traditionally we have been conducting events related to physical security, geopolitics, and similar subjects. Here we are taking a departure and going into another of our core competencies, that is business continuity management and resilience. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen to introduce the agenda for the day and run you through a little bit. So do let me know if you can see my screen. Somebody, can you see my screen? Yeah, so like I said, today from 10:30 to 1:30 Indian Standard Time and other time zones will be conducting this event. And we are very happy and very privileged to have our partners also as part of the event. So Ascent, Mreach, Business Continuity Map, and ACES Bangalore chapter. So thank you all for being partners and part of this event with us. What we are going to do is that we have a packed agenda starting from now. So we were scheduled to have the opening remarks from Janil Sharma for a few minutes, which we may have to skip because he's not available for today's discussion due to travel. The first panel is going to be from 10:45 to 11:30 on business continuity in the new workplace, which I shall be moderating, and I already have my eminent panelists already joined us on the call. The next panel will be from 11:35 to 12:20, where we'll be talking of using technology and platforms to enhance organizational resiliency and efficiency, which will be moderated by Pawan Desai, CEO of MitKat. We shall then quickly, in about 10 minutes, demonstrate our platform, which is going to be done by the team of predictive risk intelligence, which would be something useful to all resilience and business continuity professionals. From 12:35 to 1:20, we'll have the third panel discussion, which will be moderated by Mitesh Shah, who's our Director Asia Pacific based out of Singapore. He'll be moderating a panel on building supply chain and organizational resilience and the developments across India and APAC. Lastly, we shall have the summing up and closing remarks by Colonel Sam, MD and co-founder of MitKat. So just to show you the panel. So these are the people for the first panel. These are the people for the second panel. These are the people on the third panel. So without further ado, and with your permission, may I start off on the introduction of the people and the topic for the first panel, since we do not have specifically planned for opening remarks other than what was scheduled for Janil Sharma. So all the panelists, are you good to go?
Yep. Absolutely.
Great, great. Thank you, everyone. And folks, today we are going to talk about, in this panel, we are going to talk about business continuity in the new workplace. To discuss this topic, we have very eminent professionals amongst the first. So when I introduce you, I'll request you all, ladies and gentlemen, to just raise your hand once and wave out to the audience or say a quick hello. We have Kundan, who's a first generation passionate and entrepreneur who enjoys working with people and teams. He's got 20+ years working in technology, building businesses, and very hands-on leader in the resilience industry. He's extensively traveled, worked in Asia, Middle East, North America. Kundan is a BS 25999 lead auditor from the early days in 2000 and has been creating a risk and resilience business with technology innovations. And he's currently based out of Toronto in Canada. Very established and well-known name in the resiliency industry circle. So thanks, Kundan. Again, a big thank you for joining us so late in the night, your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Alexander Chaco, also known as Alex commonly, he leads the global BCMS program for Infosys. He's based out of Bangalore. He's got 18+ years of active planning and implementation experience across the entire BCMS lifecycle, working across global locations, functions, accounts, as well as clients. He's also very active in the ISO TC292 and MSD 17, representing India and BIS for relevant ISO and IS standards. So welcome, Chaco. Great to have someone like you on the panel.
Hi all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Thanks. Then we also have Funny. Funny has over 17 years of experience working in the business BCM field, incident management and IT domains, coupled on with great hands-on experience in information security risk, finance and people management. He's a certified BCM professional from DRII, certified ISO 27001 lead implementer from BSI and ITIL certified also. In his current capacity, he's working with HSBC and he's heading the business continuity and incident management function for all HSBC offshore operations and IT centers that are spread across 8 countries with over 90,000 staff working in these locations. So really honored to have you on the session, Funny, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Jugal. Pleasure to join the session. Thank you.
We also have Daman, who's been in the resilience industry and is well known for 35 years plus. He's a trainer, he's a consultant, he's an executioner, he's an auditor, he's an assessor, he's an author of books and a speaker. He's won multiple awards nationally and globally, and currently he's just joined EY as Vice President, Operational Resilience Program Management. And of course, he also spends a lot of time and effort on pro bono work. So thanks, Daman. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Neeti is another person who needs no introduction. She has a proven industry experience of 25 plus years with more than 15 and a half years in resilience management. And she's consulted several Fortune 500 organizations on building and supporting continuity and crisis management programs. She was responsible as global pandemic SME and consultation during the COVID-19 pandemic situation for their organization. She's also worked with Tata Elxsi, Hewlett Packard, IBM Global Processing Services, CXC, which is now called DXC. And she's currently with Concentrix in business resilience, crisis management, and DR for the last 7 years. Last but not the least, hi Neeti, and welcome to the session.
With pleasure. Thank you so much for that introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Neeti. We also have Sai Chandrasekhar, who's head of risk and resilience for SocGen Global Solutions Center in India. He oversees all the aspects relevant to risk management across IT, banking operations, finance, and research services that are carried out here in India for SocGen's entities worldwide. He's got 22 years of experience in the BFSI sector. He's worked in multinational banks like HSBC and Standard Chartered and supported their GRC transformation programs. He's also the recipient of the Top 50 Innovators Award in 2019. That's something I didn't know, Sai. Congratulations for that, and such an honor and a privilege to have you on the call. Sai, are you there?
I don't see him.
Yeah, I think he's dropped out, but we'll wait for him to join back. Okay. So thanks everyone for being here once again. And today, like I said, we are going to talk about business continuity in the new workplace and some aspects related to that. So I'm not going to talk a lot about the topic as such, because we have such eminent experts going to deal with it. But basically, we need to look at some aspects of the new workplace. So generally, today everyone's asking the question, who changed the workplace for us? Who transformed the workplace for you? So was it your CTO? Was it your CISO? Was it your CEO? And everyone comes back to that big C, which is COVID-19. So I think we are pretty equivocal in understanding the reason for change, and organizations are double-minded and sort of mixed opinions, whether it was a change for the better or a change for the worse. And because of this, they are sort of not able to currently specifically home on which is the best workplace for their organization. They're still debating between hybrid models, everyone to office model, no one to office model. Every day you hear of a different controversy where some big MNC has either called their people or told their people not to come and saying that, this is not going to work, you got to be here. And others saying that, why do you need to be here? We've sold off all our buildings. We just got one head office. Everyone sit at home and work from home. So these are the dynamics of the new workplace that today we are looking at. The workplace as we knew it has probably changed forever. And big and large, all global organizations are experimenting with hybrid models of various kinds. What used to be normal and BAU is very different from what it is now. So a few days back, I was doing a crisis simulation exercise on resiliency for one of the organizations. And when we started studying their BCP, we realized that this is all now BAU. This is the norm. So where is the BCP? You know, what is the new BCP? Because whatever was there in that BCP document is what they are doing today. That's how they are functioning today. So it was really interesting to look at that and say that, okay, now, so what is now the BCP? And that's some of the things that we are going to talk about. And but however, in some sectors like manufacturing, not much has changed. Supply chains are a different story. So they have been forced to talk about now nearshoring, reassuring, China plus one, and so many other issues which they had never thought of. I mean, for them again, those were all BCP measures and crises and emergencies, which are now the normal. So with that as a very brief introduction, you know, I'd like to sort of start by first defining what is the new workplace. Then we can touch upon how BCM has changed in the last 2-3 years. And then we should look at how BCM managers are now going to be dealing with all these changes. So I'll request Kundan, if you could go first and sort of just from your understanding, you're interacting with so many clients worldwide about the new BCM tool and the new BCM innovations technology that you are dealing with. So in your understanding, what is different? How have organizations changed? And are these changes going to be permanent, semi-permanent, or very temporary?
Thank you, Sushil. First of all, a very warm good morning to everyone out there. You know, it may be a little late, but I am so aligned with working with our teams, folks in India, Asia, Middle East. So pretty used to a similar, and this is my second live session today. This morning we had a product launch, but great to be here among this eminent, the panelists in here and see an amazing outcome turnaround with attendees. We've about 250 people out on the sessions. So great work done on getting together. So you're right, Sushil. First of all, I think the workplace and the whole continuity management, my personal passion into the subject. I can share a little bit of this side of the world with what's happening. And I've been closely working across the Middle East and Asia as well. I think the business continuity management as a theme, or back in the days, if you remember information security, today it has become part and parcel and an embedded culture within organizations. And that's precisely where business continuity management is today. It is no more a choice or a good to have. It is a must have, the way you have a CRM, a finance tool, or culturally, the economics of business continuity in a workplace is kind of core to the business. You cannot function without having a resilience built in or a continuity management. Continuity management, still we say, if you talk about business continuity, you say, this is the traditional old ways of doing it. You say operational resilience, and everybody's talking about all of that, which precisely is all about, how you position yourself as an organization. Business continuity management was, the repository management, or you call it as a workflow management. But in today's time, if that cannot do an action or, give you the crisis happens and you can't deal with it today, you're not resilient, right? And how fast can you recover the organization to that crisis is what matters at the end of the day. And you'll be very surprised to look at the statistics around the culture. Everybody in the West is talking about the same thing. If you look at Tesla, Elon Musk wants everybody to come to office. That's never going to happen unless your organization is manufacturing or a plant-based. In the tech sector or the services business, we don't know how things will shape up, but then the world is never going back into what it was pre-pandemic. It has changed forever. How we all adapt, what organizations adopt, which are the more smarter people who would say hybrid plus learn every day with what is happening new, and then continuously evolve and change in that direction. We're seeing that the tools that were used earlier, whether talk about LDRP days or the IBM days and all of those, I think all of them have gone back in the practically not been used. I shouldn't be using any other words. But then, the need for hours is more predictive, as you mentioned initially, which we are going to be, seeing in part of your demonstration. It is a predictive way of operating how organizations should start to look at it. But, my 2 cents are, we are in Asia are better off, and we are adapting this faster than the Western world. We may look at this as very advanced, but it is not. These organizations here, Fortune 500 companies, are also evolving, and some of them are pretty big names, which do not have that level of sophistication, because it was back in the time when it was done well. But today things have changed, and you got to relive it. You got to change things and do it faster than anybody else. So, I'll take a pause on that and hand it back to you, Sushil.
Thanks, Kundan. I do. So just a quick one. Do you see any difference in the speed of transformation of bigger organizations with vis-a-vis smaller ones, which are more agile, or is it about the same?
No, the smaller ones are doing faster, honestly. Some of the larger organizations have their own constraint. There's still a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of processes which are holding them back. Resilience is not about that. It's cutting across the processes and doing it faster. So big organizations are still striving, and there is a big challenge with them. I did talk about it this morning when we did it, that you look at any change management, the larger organization will take about a year to make a decision, another year to go and execution. It's a big change. You can't wait. Nobody has got that kind of a time. You got to change it fast. We live in the AI world. Things are very different than what it used to be. And this pandemic, the COVID has actually changed everything. Technology, as we all see, has become a backbone of entire business. Technology disruption and an operational resilience has added a data layer, right? It was a technology failure. Now with the operational resilience stating it's a data layer, you protect your data as well. So the smaller organizations are adopting much faster, and they're going to grow faster compared to the larger ones. That's my view on it.
I'll probably come back to you to hear more on that from you. And Daman, you've been in the industry, I think, the longest as compared to everyone else in the panel. So what do you see? How do you see things changing? What are your observations? And now, so far you were looking at it from the outside in. Now you're also in. So I'd like to hear both perspectives.
Thank you very much. I prepared some notes, so I hope you wouldn't mind if I read through. Right? As Sushil and all on the panel, all.
Yeah.
Thanks, first of all. I would like to begin by saying that the workplace has become quite wide and complex. So Sushil was saying, what is the new definition? What is the workplace? New workplace. It started from office, moved to my home, whether I was in or out, and from my home to someone else's home. I could be working from anywhere. To car, to co-work space, to shop, mall, coffee shop, road, or even from under the tree, all in between the office and my home. So this is the new workplace. That's why it's so wide and complex. Work from home or hybrid working is being said to be new normal, but I personally do not agree with that at all. Office is office. Home can be and should have been a small or temporary arrangement and can never replace the office or cannot take over the office. Work from home, the so-called new norm or BAU, has more challenges than it resolves, according to me. I have run surveys globally. I know other surveys also. We know so many other reports coming out. These challenges of working from home or working from anywhere, if we call it hybrid or remote working. The biggest challenge that I see is mental health. And there may be 10 more. If I attempt to list: physical security, information security, boredom while working from home. People have question mark or eyebrows may go up. We are with family. What do you mean by getting bored at home? We need to, perhaps keep our hand on heart and then answer this question or many of these questions. Missing office corridors. Some people have been missing. Physical health also has been challenged. Overwork. Now, I would like to challenge any organization in the world that claims that the productivity went up while their people were working from home. My output became more. My output increased, but I was working not 8, 9 hours, 10, 12, 15, 18 hours perhaps. So productivity may be same or actually maybe a little low with impact on quality also, I would say. And family relationships have slowed. Again, a difficult one if we want to admit, then only we'll be able to find solution. And I can probably narrate an example from my personal life for each of these. When we say boredom at home or missing the office corridors, I'm picking up only one of those. We should not look at people like me and others speaking from this stage today. We must look at the fresh and young workforce also. We perhaps are fed up of corporate and we want to be away from it as soon as possible and as much as possible. But this young force, they have just started dreaming of the corporate world. So let's not kill their dreams by work from home or the so-called new norm. So these are some changes quickly I want to pick up. Depending on time, I can pick up examples. There are many examples.
Thanks, Daman. That's I'm not sure that everyone agrees with your definition of whether that's right, wrong, good, bad. But I'm sure each organization has its own dynamics, and like I said initially, people are still trying to figure out what's right for them, what's
Agreed.
right for their organization.
Yes.
And I'm sure there will be people making mistakes along the way till they settle down to a new equilibrium. We don't know what that equilibrium and like I
Absolutely.
said, equilibrium will be very different for everyone.
Absolutely.
But again, looking at it from the risks to the resiliency part of it, and then what are the threats to the new BAU, and how do you have the new BCM to deal with that, is something which initially I'll just ask Neeti to give her opinion on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for bringing. And I kind of tend to agree on a lot of things with Kunal. Kundan. Part of it with Daman as well. The workplaces are changing, and by workplaces, I would get into the people, process, technology, everything, right? So just a gist of everything. Where we have a set of people, who want to work from office because they're tired of working from home. They want to come back to the corridors. You see the younger generation, they enter the office, no matter you tell them social distancing to, they don't care. For them, hugging their own friends is like, a bliss. Okay. Then we're talking about, a whole set of people, who have liked this working from home thing. They still feel that work from home is a boon and they want to continue working from home. Today, you hire a new person, the first question is, will you be making me work from home permanently? Yes or no? It can go either ways. It can be, I'm liking work from home or I'm disliking work from home. Under both circumstances, people have stayed at home for too long. And that also means that there have been mental well-being challenges. And I'm glad today's workplaces are talking about it. They're doing a lot of things to cater to their staff's needs. So that's absolutely important. I'm glad, when we factor our plans, the new BCPs or the new business resilience plans, we're talking about the people aspects of continuity. Will my people be available? When we are talking about workplaces, and as Daman and Kundan also brought it rightly, that, it's not just about work from home, it's work from anywhere. And when we say anywhere, it could be anywhere. And that also brings in another challenge, because initially when you plan for one office, the office goes down, you plan for an alternate office, your, alternate infrastructure, the things were kind of sorted for you. Now, the challenge is you've got a natural disaster, a whole lot of people working from home, and just look at the reverse aspect of it, because the clients are asking for it, right? So when you're getting them to work from home, a natural disaster, power is gone, your connectivity is gone. So are so many of your so-called virtual offices, because they are an extension of your office, all right? So you've got to plan for it. So we used to talk about work from home as a strategy at one point of time, that okay, something happens, we'll move people to work from home. Now it is the reverse, because you have a situation and you have to factor, hey, where do my people work from? Because the clients are talking about deliverables, they're talking about SLAs, and how do we deliver that? Bringing some more challenges. I would say today, when our clients look at the plans, they don't look at BCM plans in a silo. For them, a BCM, crisis management, resilience plan, whatever we call it, has an element of cybersecurity, because over the past couple of years, the number of attacks and the threat vectors have been increasing. You got phishing and spoofing and God knows what all names. But yes, that's increasing. And when we talk about those tabletop exercises, you've got to talk about everything. You've got to talk about moving from and to work from home, plus the people aspects, the mental well-being, and also, preparing them for situations like this one. Your monitoring has enhanced, especially when you're dealing with client data. And so are your need for, I would say, a secure customer experience per se. So I think those are some of the aspects, the way the new workplaces, the new resilience models, they're changing. And so are the client demands. You and I are also clients to some organization. And so do we have several of them? And trust me, that's what we've been talking about. It's definitely a very dynamic situation, and and quite interesting, in terms of the changes that are now coming up.
So as far as the business continuity planning of an organization is concerned, Niti, do you think the threat landscape to disruptions has increased, decreased, remained same, or and just changed some things, or do you think there is something different that we should be looking at very differently?
Definitely, the planning aspect has changed. It's no longer what we used to call those initial plans. For a lot of people, they were paper plans built for compliance. You get an audit done, you got a certification, and you're sorted. Because most of the times they were never they were never really, I would say, invoked the way we used to talk about them, right? Today the plans are very different. You've got to have them updated and maintained so well. You've got to think of strategies, and not just one strategy fits all. You've got to be very, very customized when you go with that approach. So it's no longer one size fits all, one template fits all. It's got to factor all the aspects of people, process, and technology, and that's
really
important.
Because again, when we were talking to some of our clients, one of the things that was that a few years back they were looking at, okay, how can we make sure people get to work? Now people sitting in tier 2, tier 3 cities and working from there. Now today the concern is that, do they have an uninterrupted power supply? Do they have perfect internet connectivity to continue working? Is the VPN stable? And now VPNs are again coming into the limelight with more regulations by the government. So I'll shift focus to Funny. So Funny, give us your experience dealing with these issues, and how is the new business continuity planning likely to unfold?
Well, sure, Sushil. Firstly, before I could answer that, a very good morning to everyone. And Sushil and the team, thank you for having me in this panel today. Really pleasure to take part and join you all. Well, from my experience working in the BCIM domain for the last couple of years, and more specific to the last 2 years, right, things have evolved in a big way. I mean, all of us witnessed the impact COVID has brought over the last 2 years, and we continue to still sail through some of it. However, looking at COVID in isolation, right, as a business continuity professional, I definitely, with high confidence, can say that it helped the organizations to strengthen their resilience. I mean, moving away from the erstwhile planning that we used to have, which Daman has alluded to, and Niti has also mentioned, that which was all focused on a specific premises. I mean, what if in the event if the building becomes unavailable, or if the people in the building becomes unavailable, and so on, which has moved on. I mean, aligned with the definition that Daman has mentioned, right? The definition of workplace has gone wider now. So thereby the planning has also, I mean, planning also needs to be aligned with the revised definition, not just limiting our planning to only what if the building becomes unavailable, but also going beyond and trying to understand what if the internet service provider in the city becomes unavailable, what if the electricity in the country, in a specific city or part of a city becomes unavailable. I mean, we've had those incidents in the last 2 years, right? I mean, one of the questions that I've been getting over the last 2 years, especially after everyone switched to work from home, and work from home had proven to be an effective recovery arrangement for COVID, right? Why can't this be a long-term arrangement for us? Why do we need to bank on and spend huge amounts in maintaining a real estate for BCP purpose, or maintaining a team in another country to manage the recovery and all that? My simple answer to all of those questions is, well, when you look at COVID in isolation, no doubt in saying that, yes, work from home has been an effective recovery arrangement, but just adding any other incident on top of COVID, right? And in our part of the world, we did experience those incidents. We've had Cyclone Yas impacting Kolkata and a few floods impacting Mumbai and all that. The first thing that happens when we experience these natural calamities is disruption to power and electricity services, which impacts the work from home arrangement. That's number one. And number two, the roads becomes impassable, whereas you can't even get people into the office. So while you may have your buildings available, you can't get people into the office. And while people may be available at home, you can't get them to work because of lack of access to internet and the power connections. So thereby, what I would say is, we cannot completely take away the benefits of what the traditional BCP has brought. The importance of traditional BCP is still there. Adding to it, whatever enhancements that we have seen over the last 2 years can be used as an additional arrangement, but not as a substitute to what we used to have in the past. So those continues to play a role. And as Neeti has mentioned, right, I don't think any process or any organization can just bank on one arrangement. I think it's high time, whereas we need to have multiple arrangements in place so that based on the nature and the scale of the incident, the required arrangements can be activated. And the arrangements should clearly ensure that they're able to address the key three dependencies that any business would have. One is the people, second is the premises, and third is the infrastructure. As long as the plans that we have in place can address these three things, any incident you name will have an impact to one of these three key dependencies, and our plan should be in a position to be able to respond to these dependencies at any point in time.
Thanks, Funny. Just a quick one, sort of add-on question there I wanted to touch upon. Is that we've seen that in the last 2-3 years, technology has been a huge enabler for our business continuity management. But conversely, a lot of organizations are looking at this as potential failure points for their business continuity. So how do we reconcile the two? What are the, I'm sure Kundan has great suggestions and solutions for that. But very broadly, I mean, how should a business continuity manager be looking at whether to add more technology to improve the resilience, or I don't know, just what is your experience, if you could share with us?
From a technology perspective, the key change that I see is, one, as you've earlier mentioned, Sushil, in the erstwhile working model, right? When everyone were working from office, the technology was very much limited to the organization. I mean, in the event of loss of an infrastructure within the office, I mean, the impact was very much limited to that. But in the revised scheme of things, technology has gone beyond just the organization. It's also, I mean, a loss of an internet service provider can also have an impact to our business continuity. So the dependency on technology has gone up. So I would address that in two folds. One, the internal technology that the organization maintains, obviously the resilience that they need to that they used to have will need to continue to be there. In fact, the need for specific services, say such as VPN, where the dependency on VPN has gone up multifold when we compared to 2 years ago. Obviously, the resilience around maintaining the VPN services and so on, and other services that are used for remote working, obviously that needs to be strengthened. And on top of it, as Neeti has mentioned earlier, right? We need to ensure that the critical resources who are working from home, do they have adequate backup for their internet services? Do they have adequate backup for their power connections and so on? So, I mean, the starting point to establish all this is to really understand where all our employees are working from. While the definition of workplace is widened, but at the same time, as an organization, it is important for us to have a line of sight to where all our employees are based off. Which internet service providers are they dependent on? What is the backup connection that they have in the event of loss of a primary service? Whether do they have a power backup from the place where they are working or not? That database is a starting point for any organizations to start maintaining, not just to use it during the time of incidents, but also during BAU as well, for us to be able to conduct some proactive analysis to say that, well, say if there are about 300 folks in an organization based in Hyderabad, of 300, if say, just hypothetically, say 250 of them are dependent on Airtel for their internet connection, which means that's a heavy dependency that they have on one single service provider. Those are the nuances that they need to look at when they're operating in a BAU mode to ensure that they're well prepared in the event of any disaster impacting their BAU operations.
Thanks, Funny. I think that is very comprehensively covered, and we may touch back more on that.
Sure.
So as you all have so far defined, we are looking at a very complex workplace today. What is BAU is very difficult to define. What is the resilience and crisis management is very difficult to design. So business continuity managers who had a well-defined list of standards and processes and the way of going about it, all that has gone for a toss. A lot of it has changed drastically. So I mean, Alex, and then first to Alex and then to Sai, wanted you to touch upon, how should business continuity managers learn to handle all these changes? What should they be doing to make sure that they not only provide that required amount of resilience to the organization, but also remain relevant in their own fields, and technology doesn't take away their jobs. If I put it very very crudely and bluntly, so over to you, Alex, and then we'll take Sai.
Sure. Thanks, Sushil. And again, I just want to start again thanking the entire MitKat team as well as the associate partners for bringing up this symposium. And I think quite a lot of learnings that I've already got. There is a saying, Paisa Vasool. So already I've got some Paisa Vasool already. So again, coming to the point, I think the idea here is that this COVID really has been one of the inflection points, right? If I go with Andy Grove. So at least the 2 decades of driving BCMS for Infosys globally, I have seen a few milestones or inflection points, right? Which actually have taken the BCMS area to the next level, maturity level, if you look at it, right? We had the Y2K, if I start from 2000. A lot of focus on DR, then the 9/11 came, a lot of terrorist attacks happening in that scale to US, in the US, obviously, right? Keeping a lot of learnings that came out. 2004 tsunami, again, a situation that came up. And for some time, we actually were waiting for a standard to also help us, right? So then when BS 2.999 came in around 2006, 2007, again took us to the next set. And then 2011, again, the Japan earthquake, if I want to highlight. Again, multiple things happening together. Again, because see, the point is, we are always ready for the last disaster, right? There is one saying that comes. So when every new area comes, okay, then we gear up and do a lot of things. So 2011, again, one important area. 2012, the ISO 22301 first time ISO standard coming in, helping the industry to grow, right, aligned to that. And then if you go to 2015, the Chennai floods, and and then finally coming to the COVID part of it, I think the industry did not really have a choice than learn and move on, right? A lot of learning on the ground really happened. So I start with that aspect, right? When you look at such a big risk, unprecedented threat which actualizes, and if you go to the standard clause 6 talking on risk and opportunities, again, the idea here is there are opportunities, right? So rather than thinking technology takes over the BCMS domain itself in whatever way, I think it's actually a good opportunity that really has come in. And I have a feeling that the BCMS industry or the BCMS practitioners have a never seen unprecedented opportunity in front of us, right? So if we are able to use this, we are able to then take the BCMS programs in our own organizations, the clients that we work with, to the next level, right? So getting on the practitioners aspect of it, the PDCA lifecycle, if you look at it, obviously, more or less, it will be the way it is, right? As we have said, but the specifics is where the changes are possible. And that is where practitioners have a very important responsibility. And especially now when the leadership is very driven and very focused. And again, it was not a choice, right? It just happened. And the entire organization, rather than only the BCMS practitioners, had to very clearly think about and act on BCMS day in, day out for the last 2 years. And still continuing, right? We still are looking at news and trying to find out, okay, whether there is an eruption or whatever, right? Though we say it is a BAU, but we're all keeping our eyes and ears open, right, for that chance where something goes wrong, again come back to that lockdown stage and all those things, right? So this is an opportunity for us, that is, and since the leadership is aligned, and I have to say that that's a very important aspect I want to highlight, and especially coming from a large organization perspective. I heard Kundan mentioning smaller organization. By the nature of what they are obviously nimble, right, very more flexible. But that does not stop large organizations to also be as nimble as possible, right, with the circumstances, with the possibilities which are there. And especially so now, because the organization is in a way aligned to the value of BCMS, to the value of, because these things that we had not thought about, typical situations. I remember earlier, the maximum level of a worst case scenario used to be maybe a country level disaster or an incident, right? We used to have a lot of building level, city level, all those things used to be there, and country level used to be, okay, we have done it. Okay, if you have a country level BCP, and that's it. But now what has happened? It's a multi-country. I don't know what is the next. Okay, as we say, we always prepare for the last emergency. So I don't know, maybe intergalactic. I'm just saying. Okay, so that's the opportunity that we have across all the domains, right?
You're not wrong there. Alex, we got a query once that can you help us identify what we should be doing in case of a major asteroid strike? So that did take us by surprise. But
you have it. Okay,
sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Okay, so these are all possibilities, right? So when I look at, say, I heard a lot of things, right, on the work from home, whether it's the right model or all those things, right? See, we have looked at certain risks which have come up, right, especially from power, internet, VPN perspective. But I think one thing I just wanted to highlight is on the cyber as a threat, right? Cyber threat is actually all pervasive in that sense, right? I think since the work has moved away from the office to anywhere, cyber as a threat itself actually has gone up by leaps and bounds, and with a lot of attacks which are already happened or going to happen, which could have an adverse impact on business, right? So that is one area I think our practitioners very clearly need to be focusing on, making sure that we do the right things, we actively embrace the technology changes, the possibilities of risk, the vulnerabilities which are actually possible, and see what can be done really going there. One point again I just wanted to highlight. I think in the lack of time, maybe I think you will come back again on this, but the point where I'm coming to is, as an organization, when organizations are thinking about security by design, data privacy by design, so this is like a wonderful opportunity for us to also think BCMS by design, right? Not as an afterthought. Okay, so it's like one thing we normally see, and again, as a practitioner, I also have some blame to take on that, right? So what happens is, the thought here is from the entire life cycle of a typical client, right? Or we work with any new business comes in, the moment or before the business comes in, are we there, the BCMS industry, or what we need to be doing? Are we there across the life cycle from the in to the out? Right. So this is a wonderful opportunity, and especially because the alignment is there. I think it's up to us to actively go out and look at BCMS by design as a very clear concept. And there are certain more things, especially on the technology part, I just wanted to highlight. There are organizations which have had simple hard copy documents, online documentation and all, but the point is, or the risk that is there, which can actually be looked at from a practitioner perspective, is on how can we make BCMS part of the life cycle itself, where the organization does business and business continuity totally aligns to it. Okay, on that thought, I just want to take a pause.
Thanks, Alex. Very nicely pointed out. And cybersecurity is something which Niti also touched upon when she described, work from home environment, about phishing attacks and spoofing and things like that. So I'm sure those are real concerns, and security by design, and similar to that, BCMS by design. Very nice concept. I think we'll let's see if we can talk about that subsequently, or if not today, some other conversation. Sai, just wanted to come to you now. As per your understanding, and your experiences, how do you think BCM managers should deal with the emerging situation? How should they make sure their role remains relevant, and how should they protect their organizations better?
So, good morning all, and thanks Sushil for having this question over to me. And I'm just going to contextually build on what my esteemed co-panelists have already said. So first, there are a few things that we must understand or accept about the times we live in. Number one, we believe we know it all. Time and again, that confidence has been shaken by unexpected turn of events around us. Our perception of how any of the business continuity risks look and feel have been challenged by what we have experienced in the last 24, 30 months. So the biggest takeaway from that is that we are never too prepared for anything whatsoever. Number two, we have now come to realize that events need not be sequential. It's not like in the movies where there are 20 bad guys waiting to harm the hero. But when time comes, they go one at a time instead of going all together and overpowering the hero. We know it does not happen, right? And that's not the way things have unfolded, at least in the recent past. Number three, our regulators are most interested in our business continuity and resilience strategies than ever before. It is very likely that organizations will face regulatory actions in the coming months for having a weak or inadequate resilience strategy for our critical business services. As a consequence, there is an aspect of regulatory compliance that is being entangled into what was otherwise a largely freehand function. Now, when we look at the profile of an ideal business continuity manager, we realize that their role description has undergone some subtle yet immensely significant changes, and things are continually evolving in that space. For a business continuity, from a business continuity team or for a business continuity team to remain effective in the current context, it would be imperative for them to be or to have an intrinsic understanding of their core business activities of not only their organization but also the vendor organizations that cater to them. They must stay abreast of emerging technology that their organizations are embracing and associated continuity risks. They have to build their understanding of cyber, cross-border, and regulatory scenarios. They have to be diverse and inclusive and be excessively process-oriented, where nothing stops even in their own absence. Business continuity and resilience are no longer an overhead or an annual drill. So from that perspective, if I were to look at it, it has to be holistic and maximal in ensuring seamless recovery and continuity. In my opinion, we must strive to reach a position with our business continuity strategy where we are able to integrate our resilience capabilities right into our mainstream production capabilities, and not as an ancillary step up or step down from what we would normally do at our workplace. It may not sound easy, but that is where we are expected to get to. Today, we are in what we call the forming stage of achieving this. Even if I were to look at the global arena, irrespective of the industry, we have some early winners and also some late joiners. But most of us are playing catch up at this point in time. As we all know, there is really no prize for coming first here, but there is a lot of merit in getting it right the first time itself. Perhaps an ask from my side at this point is that, if I could wish to see the fraternity come together and collaborate on building what could be a best-in-class and sustainable syndicate that collectively helps strengthen our resilience postures. I'm just conscious of time, Sushil, so thanks again for the opportunity, and over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sai. This is really insightful and, I'm sure very helpful for existing and potential business continuity managers. I had a couple of more questions, but I think the audience has come out with some interesting questions, and I would like to hand them over to the people that they've been addressed to. So Kundan, there's a question to you about is this the new way of life? And if it is, then who can manage without reverting to the earlier model? Is there any research or data that you have identified on this? I think you've already read the question, so I'll just ask you to quickly address that directly.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that question. First of all, I want to make a mention of what Alex mentioned and come back to the answer, which is, I think this is probably the golden era for anybody involved in business continuity management profession, by virtue of where we are in the world. Anybody, directly or indirectly, have role responsibility within the organization, certification. I think this is the time to create that value and create that impact within the organization across the world, across the country. So this is the time. It is changing the world of what it used to be and how things have been. Just touching upon the question, yes, in a way, things are just culturally changing. There's a lot of talk about resignations and all of that, but yes, organizations are struggling to retain people because work from home, as the culture changes, the entire ecosystem changes. People need more flexibility. There are no data, no statistics available as yet. But again, we are all evolving. Everybody's learning with time, and which we will try and adjust to the changing circumstances. It's not that people are not going to leave and the new people will come in, but it's the dynamics of organization, the regulations as Sai talked about. Regulators are coming heavy on the business continuity management of the organization. The way we used to conduct it is no more a pen and a paper. We used to do Excel spreadsheet, BIs and all of that. That's not, you can't have one BCM plan for an organization. It is going to be more dynamic in nature for that particular point. But just to address that question, there aren't any data and statistics available as yet. But we all know we can read the pulse about what's happening around the world.
Thanks, Kundan. Thanks for taking that on. And definitely, we look forward to data being compiled by some organizations, at least. Unlike this report, which is floating around since yesterday, that 86% people are going to resign. The great resignation is coming to India. I have my own opinions on that, but we can discuss that line. But there's an interesting question from Sachin. I'm not sure who would like to take that. Sachin Kumar Singh says that we have BCM programs which are now 4 years old, and it has become a mere or a minor documentary update and a regulatory reporting. So is this going to change? What is the new path of resilience? Anyone wants to take that on?
Can probably start with Sushil, and then obviously the other colleagues can add to it.
Go right ahead.
So as we've discussed earlier, right, the definition of workplace has evolved in the last 2 years. Yeah, so thereby our preparedness as well will need to accordingly align with the new definition of the workplace. As our colleague Alex has earlier mentioned, right, we need to ensure that the organization becomes resilient by design. And that can be achieved by ensuring, as I said earlier, the 3 key dependencies: people, infrastructure, and premises. As long as we've got adequate plans in place to ensure that they are well prepared to be able to respond to any event, ensuring that the organization is made resilient by design. I think that's the way that we should look at it, to ensure that, one, we are able to address the challenges associated with the widened workplace and ensuring that we are well prepared for all the key three dependencies.
Thanks. That's very appropriately brought out. There's another small question by someone, and if we can just have a little bit of a brainstorming one-liner on that from someone. So he says that, like Alex brought out, that we are always preparing for the last disaster. And like we used to say in the army, that you're always fighting the last war. So can we sort of identify where is the new paradigm shift coming? Anything, I mean, just a one-liner idea from anyone, or 2 lines or something.
Maybe I can start, Sushil.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So though I have mentioned this, that we are preparing for the last scenario, but I think shooting in the dark is also not a possibility, right? So as we go further, see, the point is, as an organization, the idea should always be on how we continue to be resilient. How do we continue to do our basics right, so that if there are eventualities that happen, we are then able to adequately, because see, we cannot really forecast anything happening, right? So there is no way really, and obviously a lot of forecasting really happens. When I say that, again, I think we have some amount of blame to take, because that's a part of our planning, right? Scenario planning that we really do, but not necessarily all scenarios will fructify, right? So the idea is, as an organization, how do we actually be ready for the change, right? If there is a change that happens, like as we say, right, the change is actually taken, like handled better by the prepared, right? So if you are prepared, if something happens, I think you are able to really respond and to those eventualities, which maybe it is unprecedented as we go forward. So maybe on that note, I just want to
Thanks, Alex. Sorry, I'm mindful of time, and yeah, Daman, I'll just come to everyone once. So we just have about 4 minutes left. So if I could have a quick 45-second sort of quote from each one of you to close your thoughts on this topic that we picked up of BCM in the new workplace. So I'll start with you, Daman, your closing sort of quote.
Thank you. Yes, we are falling short of time. Otherwise, there is a lot to discuss. There's a question for me. I'll attempt to write that separately and we can share with you through mail later on. To sum up in now 40 seconds left, perhaps, my suggestion will be it's a journey of transformation. No one is perfect, even if there's 10, 20, 30 years of 30 years questionable BCM journey or even a certified BCM journey, there is always improvement possible. My suggestion is move on to this journey, start from risk management, old, yes, old, but continue, please, to ERM, integrated risk management, to GRC, all are old. We have been doing a lot. Yes, please continue, don't stop, keep improving also. Move to BCM, even that is 10 years old journey now. Yes, please continue, keep improving. Move to operational resilience and ultimately move on to a reach organizational resilience. With a word that no one is zero on resilience and no one can ever be 100% on resilience.
Perfect.
No one can ever be 100% resilient.
Thanks so much.
Journey of transformation. Let's continue on that.
Thanks, Daman. Thank you so much for summing it up so nicely. Neeti, over to you for a quick quote.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Sushil. I would say this is a journey and not the end in itself. So that's an important one. You should know your risks and all the new emerging risks. So you've got to keep abreast with the environment and, go with it. Forecast, predict some of that, but, you'll always have an element of uncertainty. Today, when people look at us as BCM professionals, somewhere they expect us not just BCM professionals, they expect us to be health and safety experts and environment, sustainability, governance, and cybersecurity and cyber resilience experts in all. So I think that's what is the upcoming thing and what we need to be prepared for.
Thanks, Neeti. Thank you so much for summing it up. And Funny, your closing quote, please.
Thank you, Sushil. Well, as BCM professionals, I think we have two key responsibilities on all of us in helping our organizations. One, to help the organizations establish robust BCP beyond office premises or the workplace as per the earlier definition. As we said earlier, right, making the organizations or rather helping the organizations become resilient by design. And two, as professionals, I think the biggest job that we have on us is to educate the management on this evolved landscape and ensuring that we make them understand the importance of traditional BCP while continuing to leverage the work from home or the hybrid working models.
Yeah, that's an important point. Management needs to be in sync with the evolving trends in BCP. Thanks, Funny. Sai, over to you. Your closing comments, please.
Right, very quickly. I mean, again, taking away from all that we discussed today, I think resilience is kind of getting to a stage where it's no longer an adjective or just a state of mind as we would previously refer to it to, but it is all about what we do in letter and spirit to conduct our businesses, even in the worst possible scenario. There has to be collective and calculated efforts in every organization to achieve it sustainably. We may be getting there, but the question is, will that be fast enough? Thank you, Sushil.
I think very important not to keep it as a buzzword and to convert it into a perennial state of mind where you're always thinking continuity. Thanks. Your closing comments, Kundan?
I think just to sum it up, everybody has put it up so nicely. BCMS, I think making it part of the culture is, and embedding into the culture is the way to go. I think no more, good to have plans. I think a must have the way we have our CRM tools and other things, or in the ecosystem from a governance top down, that hybrid culture will have a long way to go in maintaining, whether work from home or other things that may have to happen around this. So
thanks a lot, Kundan. And last but not the least, Alex, your quick closing statement.
Just one note I just want to add. The organizations continue to be paranoid so that they continue to survive, continue to thrive, and continue to sustain.
Great. Continue to be paranoid. Thank you so much, everyone. There are a couple of questions on the Q&A box for the panel. May I request all of you to please type in your answers there so that the audience feels that they have got more out of this session than the time that was budgeted for. Thank you once again, all the panelists, for this wonderful session. May I request you all to raise your hands for a round of applause to ourselves. Thank you. And with that, I would like to close this panel. Kundan, again, once again, thanks again for staying up so late in the night to be
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to move on to introducing the next panel, or starting off the next panel. And the panel is going to be moderated by Pawan Desai. So I don't think anybody in the resilience industry or the business or the physical security or cyber security consulting industry needs any introduction to Pawan. Nevertheless, for those of us who are seeing him or listening to him for the first time in the audience, Pawan Desai is the co-founder of MitKat Advisory. He's been in the space of consultancy and resilience for over now 20 years. He's been a submariner in the Indian Navy for many years before that. He's also been selected by the US Department of State to be an IVLP representative in the US. And I think he stopped writing his qualifications on his card because they are overflowing onto the other side. So he's cut out all those qualifications nowadays. And he's got an eminent panel of speakers to assist him in the discussion. So over to you, Pawan. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks a lot, I think, for very, very kind introduction, Sheel. And I was amazed at, I think it was such a enormous learning for last 45 minutes from the panels, and it was really, really great. So many things to learn from the earlier panel. So what we are going to do is very quickly move on to maybe change the gear slightly and move on to the more on why we have understood and how aspect of the entire BCMS and the new world. Just to introduce my panels, I'll request I think we have Dr. Gaurav Singh. Yes, he is switched on. And Eugene, if you can just switch on your camera, that might be really great. Thank you very much, Eugene. Great to have you. So let me just introduce, I think it's a very, very interesting panel, very, very different, coming from varied experiences. This is not any sort of a sequencing, but I'll start with the youngest first, Ankit Sabharwal on that. Ankit is an experienced resiliency professional with over 16 years of experience across BCM, InfoSec, third-party security, cybersecurity, and many more. He is currently managing the global business continuity management and security audit programs for VFS Global. Which is one of the most dynamic and I think setups in the current context. We'll be discussing about that, which is that in past he has worked with companies like Symantec, Mondelez, Nokia, so wide variety of experience on various domains. He has all the credentials like CBCP, CISA, some credentials I can't even decipher like COPC, VMO, I don't know what it stands for, but yes, there are many, many more to that. Welcome Ankit to the panel. Then we have our friend from Philippines, Eugene. He's the Vice President for BCMAP, which stands for, correct me if I'm wrong on that, it stands for Business Continuity. It stands for Business Continuity Managers Association of Philippines.
Yes,
right?
That's correct.
Yes, that's Eugene has almost 2 decades of experience in this space. He was the first, I think in 2012, and with his first national exposure as a part of the technical writing group for the countrywide area and pandemic plan. So he was always thinking ahead, much ahead. Now we are all talking about pandemic plans, and here also Eugene has almost a decade of experience in that, and he has made the plan with the aid of US AID for government agencies. A lot of experience in risk management, process reengineering, corporate governance, occupational safety. He is a man of many talents. So he also runs a company which makes uniforms, shirts for schools and golf caddy uniforms. So I think varied experiences. Welcome, Eugene, to the panel on that.
Thank you.
Then we have our very, very soft-spoken, less speaking Dhaval Kapasi, co-founder of MReach, but a man with a huge depth and a lot of knowledge in this space. I think he has created a company called MReach, which is one of the only local company with global coverage on a mass notification platform that was awarded. BCI award was given to that platform as a best product and service industry award. Also, Dhaval has more than 20 years of experience in US and in India on building and delivering various technology solutions on risk management, e-learning, banking, finance. So again, wide level of experience. Currently, the MReach solutions caters to 180 countries. It has over 35 languages and used by a lot of global corporates. Welcome, Dhaval, to the panel.
Thank you.
And I think last but not the least, there is a saying in defense that if you if you don't want to study, then you should join Army, Navy, or Air Force. But I think our friend Gaurav has proved it wrong, because he is an IIT Delhi alumni. He did his BTech, he did his MTech, and he has done also PhD in risk management. I think we don't have a better, learned or educated person than him on this panel or on this whole, the webinar. Dr. Gaurav, as I would like to call him as, has a huge experience of almost, now 2 decades of experience. He has got gold medal from IIT Delhi on various projects which he has done. He is currently doing the entire transformation at Adani Group. He is driving 150 automation and infrastructure projects globally for the Adani Group, where he's optimizing the network design and cybersecurity, integrating the cybersecurity also. And the focus is on various applications, which we'll be discussing in the panel for how do we service HR, safety, operations, security, traffic, everything you combine and use data analysis effectively and faster to make multi-criteria, multi-locational decision making. So he's working on that. Half of the things which he talks about, I think people with my caliber and intellect cannot even understand that, but we'll tell him to tone down his this thing and tell us about what he wants to do and what he's trying to do, so that we can all gain from that. Welcome everyone on the panel. Very quickly, just to set the context right. I read a very interesting quote very recently that we are all talking about for last 2, 3, 4 years. We are moving into a VUCA world. I think I don't need to define what is VUCA world, but I come across a very interesting definition. We are moving away from VUCA and we are entering a Vulcan world, which is VULCAN. So VU stands for volatility and uncertainty, as we are all, but L stands for lunatic, because we are seeing so many lunatic decisions which are being taken around, which are breaching our logic. So most of the plans when we create, we work with a logic. There is sense into that. This is what can happen. This is what can go wrong, right from Ukraine thing to Sri Lanka to maybe off late what happened, the kind of outrage which is happening in the Arab world because of a statement made by Indian politician. These are all lunatic things, which is which goes against the normal understanding of normal rational human being. Again, CA stands for complex, ambiguous. Yes, we know, but N is another good point which has come. N stands for no return. So the moment we are moving to a BCP state, that is a BAU for the next, which was discussed in the earlier panel also. So now the new BCP is BAU. So now we have to create a BCP for that. So what we are moving towards is a continuous state of protopia. That is what is that we are going to evolve continuously. And there is not going to be a state of rest for us. So unlike what BCP professional is to come back to BAU, that is not going to happen. We are going to continuously move and evolve in this, which is there. One more aspect which we are seeing this thing is there. Most of our business continuity plans usually takes care of cybersecurity dependencies like human dependencies like applications, infrastructure. But a new concept is coming, which is IoT devices and sensors. Because the adoption of IoT is going to increase. The CAGR of IoT industry is almost 18%, is highest in amongst any industry. We have around almost US $330 billion, which is spent currently, almost $680 billion by next 2 years. So it is going to double in next 2 years. So our BC plans has to effectively cater for that. Also, when we talk about supply chains, which I like Gaurav Singh, and also there is a panel on that, so we'll not dwell upon that detail, but supply chain usually is about first level of connectivity for us. But we are now dependent on third, fourth, fifth level of connections. If something goes wrong with them, then also we are impacted. So what are we doing with that? And yes, the research is being talked about people that 86% of the people are going to resign because they are asked, they are happy to get lower pay and work from home. I am recruiting a lot of people. Nobody has come for a lower pay. If anybody come across, please let me know. I'm happy to take people at a lower pay, and work from home will be allowed for them on that. Being on a lighter side with so much of complexity, I'm confident that it cannot be handled with the traditional way of making plans, documenting it, updating, training, awareness. It has to be technology driven. It has to be underlining data. It has to have analysis. It has to be have analytics and agility to change continuously. That is very, very important, which is there. So that is what we are going to discuss in this panel, that technology is not going to be an essential or a requirement. It is going to be a backbone and the core of entire BCMS of the future. And it is going to be continuously evolving. So what do we do? So maybe I'll start with Dr. Gaurav first, which is there to start the context of the management perspective. So it was good to have, and now BCMS, you are a proponent to say that it is an obligation to the management on that thing. So what are your thoughts on that? Because a tone from the top is the most important aspect on that thing. And how is it changing? And what do we need to do in the new era and new world of what we are seeing on that? Dr. Gaurav, all yours. You're on mute. We can't hear you. Gaurav, I'm not able to hear you, or?
No, we can't hear Gaurav. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yes.
You can? Okay. All right. So all right. So thank you so much. I'll just mute this. Pardon me for this. Okay, good to go. So thank you so much, Pawan, and greetings of the day to Mr. Moderator, who has successfully almost embarrassed me. I humbly accept whatever he had to say. Esteemed panelists and dear participants. So talking about an issue probably is the first step to resolving that issue. And I must thank the organizers to have organized this symposium. Having said that, we talked about the obligation. Yes, leaders definitely have the obligation to preserve the continuity of business operations, so to say. Leaders also bear the responsibility that we have to not only lead the organization through, say, climate change, the current pandemic, the ongoing war, or any other such disruption that was, last 2 decades of disruptions were listed in the last panel. Yeah, but also to support the entire enterprise. The organization's business resiliency largely, I would think, depends on its technologies and systems, and most importantly, the automation of processes. The organizations also need to have restore points. I mean, we had restore points way back in Windows 98, right? So we need to have restore points in the organizations, and different level of restore points depending on how the supply chains are faring, how the world is impacted, how we are impacted, how that particular industry is impacted, and that needs to be done in a quantified manner. I mean, we may talk about it till the cows come home, but then we need to measure in a quantified manner, and how we need to do it is through the optimization and simulation. And about that, I'll talk a bit later.
Sure.
So that we agree that the technology has become increasingly woven into the very fabric of the business. And also we agree that the organizations need to restore their operations quickly and efficiently with the, I should say, mitigated effect of the disruption or the crisis. Therefore, we must agree that the technology leaders must assume the role of a crisis leader. To respond to the challenge ahead, the technology leaders need to devise and execute their strategies across, I feel, three major dimensions, which should be plan, processes, and practices. Each one is essential for keeping the business safe, productive, efficient, and for creating a resilient organization. So I have 5 points to make here. How do we do that? Clarity on priorities. So we need to be crystal on priorities that would emerge during the crisis or disruption. And those priorities will be mapped against the different levels that we would have defined in, should I say, as we say in Forge, during the peacetime. Yeah. Second, equip the organization's connectivity, security, and infrastructure for new traffic and use patterns. So we need to ensure, I mean, we discussed in the last panel also, that the organizations must have the technological capacity and capability to support the work, be it the bandwidth demands, the VPN, the DevOps, authentication, access control mechanisms, so on and so forth. Third, prepare for life without data center. So, I mean, it looks odd in this life when everybody loves cloud, but then many organizations are already on their way to ensure that a major event at their data centers will not disrupt their critical business operations, and plan for contingency of a data center shutdown. This threat probably is as real as it gets. 4, embedded security, compliance, and privacy requirements in the recovery plans duly dovetail. So is it easy, or should I say, is it convenient to forego security or privacy controls temporarily, saying that we are responding to a crisis? The answer may be a resounding yes, but then the risks, their mitigation strategy, if it has not been considered in advance, it may lead to a major security, privacy, or even compliance vulnerabilities that may itself present as a disruptor. 5th and last, introduce automated but adjusted SLAs for critical business functions. So when I say automated and adjusted, again, I'm coming back to the same matrix, which will have the different levels of the crisis or the disruption mapped against the actions accordingly. The prioritizing services, and ensuring that the SLAs are adjusted and should I say, also appropriately communicated to the employees accordingly, to all the stakeholders, be it external stakeholders or internal stakeholders, our supply chain managers, so on and so forth, so that the expectations also get adjusted during a crisis and automatically. And that will help a great deal to minimize or optimize the confusion and chaos, because of which the disruptions have that dramatic effect on the system. Yeah, so that's it from me.
Excellent. I think the way you've explained it, 5-point priority, I think it's a fantastic thing. Yeah, easier said than done. Yeah, it's a but we'll look forward to see this getting implemented at Tani Group, and we'll take a lot of cues from inputs from you in the days to come. Thanks a lot for that. I think let me move on to Eugene. I think I like the things which you said, that the bulky plans and then documentation of the past is the thing of a past. It is not going to work in the new environment. So yes, what Dr. Gaurav said was a 5-point plan, but how do you actually execute on the ground with the new? So how is the new world looks like in terms of documentation and plans? I think your views on that, Eugene.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Pawan. Of course, thank you for MitKat for inviting me to this symposium. It's a real privilege to be joining you today. So first off, definitely there's going to be a change, right? And on how BCM is managed, how the plans are developed, and more importantly, how these are implemented. I believe that what COVID has done is that it broke the image of our Black Swan events, right? Those having high impact and low probability events. Even the fact that oil prices shot up almost 50%. In the recent months, right? At the time that we are encouraging people to go back to work, at the time where we are expecting the economy to pick up. So again, that Black Swan image has been broken. goes without saying that we are now moving to more away or probably beyond compliance, shifting from on paper to a more practical approach in business continuity. In fact, BCM is no longer a footnote when these are presented to the board of directors, right? Now it's really part of that agenda. As practitioners, we are expected to be a jack of all trades. We are weather experts, reading the storm as they come. We are economists, right? When something's going to happen, you try to understand what's the impact to my organization. We are even publicists, right? Something were bad to happen. How do I change how I talk to people and how do I correct that image? And in some cases, we are law enforcers, right? If there's a security incident, we are dragged into the conversation and point blank is asking us, so what should we do? Okay, so in all of these roles, okay, first off, I think and I believe that IT is an enabler for us. Solutions, technical solutions is something that we should be leveraging upon. It creates efficiencies in our processes. Technology solutions has always been a major component into our BCP planning. And while our workplace have evolved, whether people are working from home, they're working remotely. In fact, in my case, whether you're doing manufacturing or site, or you're having multiple vendors doing the work for you, um, it really plays a key role. Earlier, it was mentioned that technology is there. Even you're working remote, I would know if you're working. I would know if somebody's even eavesdropping on your laptop. I would even know where you are. Right? It makes the workplace smaller, but it also makes our processes much more efficient. Of course, um, key point to that one, if you're looking at it from a testing perspective, if with the absence of technology, in the old days when you do your BCP, you do your call tree, you need to wait for hours before you get the response. Nowadays, you just get it real time, right? So that helps push the our plans further, making sure that these are activated as soon as you could. Of course, with the change in our workplace environment, the risks has changed. We need to understand that. This is where our risk assessment would come in. Expanding earlier on in the first panel, we've heard about cybersecurity. We've heard about breaches. We need to also consider privacy. And at least at this point in time, we also need to look at the person level risk. Like if you have people working from home, what are the risks that they have and how can the organization support them? Shifting it a little bit, from a manufacturer's perspective, traditionally you have people working on site. Now they prefer to work from their homes because they are much more productive in that case. So just imagine me bringing sewing machines to their houses and then letting them do their stuff at home, right? But the difficult part there is how do you now maintain quality? And again, this is where I go back to technology, right? um, of course, during these times, there's a great focus on health, safety, disaster recovery, because we are so dependent on technology, and more importantly, incident management. I mentioned earlier on the various roles that the BCM practitioner has. So management teams are not much more aware of the impacts of anything that's going to happen. In fact, they are more proactive right now. As mentioned, a little thunderstorm coming on or a big drop of rain drowning out the office operations, management would tend to see if there's an impact that's happening to their operations. And I guess we need to tie that up with the reality that social media is there, right? Our inability to act upon immediately on any disruptive event might not only have an impact on the image of the organization, but it would also have an impact on how our employees see managements in terms of how they react. Again, I would need to pounce on this idea that technology solutions is really an enabler. BCP has gone a long way from just looking at it in silos. It's now more part of an enterprise risk approach wherein you try to look at it from end to end. Earlier on, we're looking at business continuity by design, and I do totally agree with that one. And at the end of the day, definitely changed. The plans might still be bulky, it might be still 100, 200 pages long, but the good news is it's in digital form. So you don't need to lug it around with you every time, put it in your car or put it in another location.
Thanks. I think great point. on that thing. Let me move to Ankit. I think you have a very complex role. This thing is there because a lot of companies can work from home. A lot of companies can do something in your kind of a setup. It's an essential services. You can't issue passports or you can't issue visas sitting at home or on that kind of thing. So in these kind of setups and with multi-country, which is very complex regulatory requirement, privacy, technology. How do you identify which technologies, and you will need technologies which are global, which can perform globally, because you cannot have something in India, something working in Philippines, something working in Australia. So how do you, the entire BCM value chain, if you say, how do you solve the problem from technology perspective and make sure that it works when the crisis happens on that?
Thank you so much, Pavan. And greetings of the day to everybody. First of all, a big thanks to Team MitKat and the partners, the sponsors, and the fellow panelists for joining. And it's been an enriching discussion so far. From my perspective, I would actually like to generalize this a little bit, because challenges that we are facing are not just a single side, but multi-side in most cases. And not just from my own organization's perspective, but every organization is kind of facing a similar challenge. I think what few things that I want to talk about from a technology standpoint are that, first of all, what are we using technology for? And I've seen this approach also in other organizations, wherein you as business continuity professionals, as cybersec professionals, the moment we get a budget, there's a certain amount of excitement, of trying to get the next big thing, the next new toy, right? But what I've also realized over the years is that point solutions don't really work. And I think in that sense, the integrators have a very large role to play. They have a large role to play in terms of explaining, understanding, educating the customer. But we as practitioners also have a very big sense of responsibility, because we need to understand our own landscape. We need to understand our set of vendors, third parties and fourth parties and fifth parties, because those are going to come into the picture sooner than later. We also need to understand what are the silos that exist at this point in time. Because much like me or anybody else in the organization, we would have a budget. And, and many organizations these days are adopting zero-based budgeting. So you don't really have a budget. You start off with zero every year. So from that perspective, when you go back and you talk to other fellow professionals, as the panel has been talking about, there is a number of other areas like health and safety. There are areas like risk management. There are areas like cybersec and infosec. And each of them will also have their own paradigm. Each of them will have their own platforms. So I think technology, from my perspective, has to play a key role in certain areas which humans will not be able to do as quickly. Predictive intelligence, for example, is a very, very big area, because you have a large number of events, a huge propensity for false positives. But then, as rightly said by Eugene and other panelists, even the smallest of event can actually have an impact which can spiral out of control. So I think those are certain areas, and similarly, certain other areas that we see with respect to how do we change our plans on an ongoing basis? How do we make sure that a single change can actually trickle down to all the plans, and that can be affected and even communicated? Because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to communication. People are going to use those plans. People are going to execute those plans. And if they're not aware in that sense, then the plan is not really much value. So from my perspective, I think one key area is, how do you leverage technology to do the heavy lifting for you? And this is where I see a lot of people thinking about point solutions because they exist in the market. But very soon you have a new problem, a new complexity getting created just by introducing a new technology to the environment. And what they fail to realize is the change management will have not just cascading effects to resilience professionals, but to the entire organization, because in the current set of things, everybody is connected and everybody is working in that sense. So I think the initial thoughts that I have is technology is a key enabler, but you need to really know where to use that. You cannot really have the silver bullet approach here. It's not going to work if you think about, I'm going to pick this up from a stable and pick that up from a stable, and soon enough you're going to have a lot of challenges in managing huge interfaces, data migration, data privacy, and other elements that you talked about. The second thing that I want to start off, this entire discussion is, we also need to think about how do we leverage this in a cross-company, cross-countries kind of a setup, because every department would have their own technology and tool landscape. So does your tool or my tool really fit into that larger scheme of things? And then thirdly, where are the areas that you want to leverage so that you have the smallest amount of team produce the most amount of impact? So where can you use AI, ML? Where can you have certain things that are repeatable, predictable, or you can train them very, very quickly. And then at some point in time, I'd also like to talk about how people come into the whole picture, because from my perspective, whether you have an integrator, you have multiple integrators of integrators, at the end of the day, is the people that make it work. So that's a very important and a very critical area.
Great. I think thanks a lot, Ankit. Before Dhaval, I come to you. I think I'll go back to using the BCP, going back to Gaurav. He has some idea on this, that are the plans of most of the COT solutions which we have, are they really going to work when the crisis happens, and what is the efficiency? If that fails, then we are dependent on that kind of thing. So what is your view on that, and how do companies from your side, when you give the requirement, what is the thought process which goes on? And then we'll come back to Dhaval for the solution part of it on that. Yeah.
All right. So, all right. Okay. So integration, I feel, is the only answer to have all the applications as well as all the platforms integrated. One application has to talk with all the other applications, so on and so forth. All the sensors, IoT, OT devices, they need to talk. They need to communicate as people do on a dynamic basis. Sure. To take the efforts or the efficiency or the resiliency program forward. Second part of it, yes. So there are a number of tools, a number of platforms, a number of solutions in the market available commercially off the shelf to monitor efficiency, probably increase efficiency. Somebody asked me when I joined the corporate world from military. Somebody asked me, you do only meetings, when do you work? So yes, to avoid meetings and still while not entering meetings and should I say investing time in the meetings, if you could have basically a digest. So let me name some of the applications that are available, and a disclaimer, very important. None of these applications, I mean, I've just pulled these applications off the net.
They are not giving you finder's fees, I'm sure.
Yeah. So disclaimer with the disclaimer in place, let me name some. And what do they do? What do they provide to the organization very quickly? So there is a platform called Basecamp. Now it's a tool for those with remote teams. We've been talking about remote teams, people wanting to work from home. So this is a tool for the managers who are managing remote teams, people working from home who'd like to keep a dynamic track of employees' tasks and also the performance as to. So in that, so basically initially it's a learning process, and once the platform learns, it is able to track the employees, their tasks and performance. So it organizes everything in one place, and the progress on assignments also could be visualized in real time. So that is one. There is another called Perform Yard. So Perform Yard streamlines the performance management strategies. So this tool allows each and every employee to participate in performance management, be it 360-degree reviews, the project-based reviews, rating scales, continuous feedback, cascading goals, etc. Then another I think of is Desk Time. So Desk Time, again, as the name suggests, it's a time tracking app for businesses, and more importantly for freelancers, the third-party DevOps teams. But it is especially helpful for business owners looking to measure the employee performance in quantified manner. So I'm sorry, I use quantified and measure and simulation and optimization a bit too much. But then I'm convinced that, you can't really measure something which is not quantified. So that's that. Another one I can think of is Trello. So Trello is work monitoring tool and project management tool rolled into one. So gone are the days of the good old PMTs that we used to have. So this tool organizes the projects into different columns on a dashboard, and it helps you visualize the workflow and ensure that each member of the team again is brought up to the speed in real time on project progression. Then very important, I can think of IntelliHR. So this is a software, again, a performance management tool. It continuously tracks the employee performance using people analytics. So they have some good people analytics, some good behavioral analytics, and they are observing the performance of the people. Like somebody just said that people are the most important resource. We also talked about the supply chain, the risks there in supply chain, and how resiliency, and supply chain gets dovetailed together. So I would like to introduce the concept of digital twin here. And I'm sure my esteemed panelists and most of us know about it. So it's a optimization and simulation tool wherein in a quantified manner, rather than measuring or trying to measure the resiliency or efficiency of a system or a supply chain in a subjective manner, from the gut feeling, so to say. So the digital twin can actually very quickly simulate and analyze the takeaways from thousands and millions of different combinations and permutations. So, if time permits, I'd like to talk about it more. But yeah, that's it for now. Thank you.
I think thanks a lot. So with that kind of a thought, which the maybe client side like Dr. Gaurav has, Dhaval, how do you handle the complex requirements? Everybody needs to be integrated, yet privacy has to be, compliance has to be managed, multi-country issues, this data cannot go there, that cannot come here, I'll give you name but not designation, employee number. So many complicated issues are there which you must be facing day in, day out with so many global corporates you work from. What is your thought on maybe how you continuously innovate, how do you maybe have ROI implications and complexity? Your thoughts on that, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, warm welcome to everyone, and nice to hear from all these esteemed panelists. I think technology has definitely been a huge impact in all of our lives, whether it's individual or organization. Okay, likes of Uber and Ola has changed how we book cabs. Amazon, Flipkart, has changed how we are going to go and shop. WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, has changed how we keep in touch with our friends, families, people whom we don't even know, right? So this has changed and it has a huge impact on all of us. So similarly, I think the technology and its innovations do help organizations. Talking about the BCM and resiliency, right? It has there are 3 stages to it, right? First of all, I think it enables you to do something that is not possible or is extremely difficult, right? Second thing is then there is a demand that you want technology to help you do the same thing in the shortest amount of time, right? Your RPOs, RTOs, all of this come into picture. Everybody wants to reduce that, and wants to reduce the time within which they respond. And then the third thing is that the cost of it, right? Does it really bring more cost to the organization, or is it going to help organizations save eventually, right? All this can be looked at when you're looking at this at an open mind, right? Yes, technology will bring a lot of risk along with it, right? And like anything, right? It is going to bring risk, but there is nothing that cannot be handled, right? With all the technology, with all the data transfers, with cloud, with vendor integrations or integrations, yes, there could be risk, but if done in the right way, I think it can help you achieve what you're trying to achieve without having to compromise on security or privacy or anything like that, right? So another thing is that I think many organizations don't even know of solutions that are available, right? So I think Pawan mentioned that we are getting into this lunatic world, right? There are problems and decisions that we are hearing, that we are not prepared for, and we have not heard, or we were not expecting in the least possibility of it, right? So how do you handle this kind of things, right? So yes, this kind of things definitely need more innovative solutions, more agile solutions, and more integrated solutions, right? So I was talking to one of the organizations, for example, right? And they said we have a wonderful program. They have a wonderful call tree process, and it's working successfully for them, and they are very happy with it. So I told them, so how long does it take, for your call tree to get completed? So they said it takes 2 to 3 days for the call tree to get completed and another 2 days to collate all the data. So within 1 week, we can do it. It's amazing. The leaders are happy. Everybody is happy. So I was shocked to hear that kind of a thing that, things that can be done at a click of a button, like in 30 minutes or 15 minutes, people have been doing that for 5 days with so many people involved in it, and they are very happy about it. They think it's a successful metrics, for them. So I think it's very important to be aware, okay, where it is there. And I think you mentioned about return of investment, right? I think most of the organizations that I talk to are very excited. As Ankit also mentioned, when you look at the technology solutions, it's very exciting. Wow, this is great. But I think there is unless and understand until you understand the real value or return on investments, right, that we are talking about, right, it is going to be difficult to push it further within your organizations, like with your leaders or with your financial authorities or something like that. So it is very important on all of this aspect. So yeah, I do feel that another thing we talked about is the work from home, right? Right now, so the new pandemic, the new culture of working from home is bringing new challenges, right? Organizations don't know where people are working from. Like, they might not be working from the official address that they have on file, but people are actually working from remote areas in their native places with their families, with their parents and all. So it is, again, important to protect your employees no matter where they are working. Okay. And yes, some of the solutions in technology have enabled organizations with a very informed decision. They can easily know where their employees are working in real-time basis, and if a crisis does occur in a particular region or a place, then they could immediately react to it and help people who are actually impacted by it, and not people who they don't know where they are going to be. So yeah, I mean, those are the initial thoughts that I had on all of this.
Great. I think your initial thoughts will be more of a closing remarks. So because we are at 40 minutes, so we have 5 more minutes to go. So just wrapping up on the part of a thing, I'll do a sort of a quick round robin on your closing remarks. That how does the future looks like? If you say that what is not working currently, and what if you want a sort of a genie and says if you want to have organization resiliency at the next level, what are the 2 or 3 things you would like to have in your setups? Maybe we'll start with Dr. Gaurav on this.
Thanks. So just one phrase.
Yes.
I think it's becoming a resilient leader while reimagining the future of work itself. So as a resiliency leader, or as a technology guy in the organization who plays a very, very important part in monitoring the resiliency and the efficiency or even effectiveness of the organization per se, an important stakeholder, so to say. So we need to be a step forward, be ahead of the curve, and reimagine the future.
Great. That phrase, excellent phrase, reimagining the future. Yes. Eugene, your point of view and closing remarks on this, please.
Yeah. So to that question, 2 things that comes to mind. 1, integrated systems. Second one is risk management. I'm saying integrated systems because, as we have heard throughout all these sessions, the quicker that you get information, the correct information that comes into you, as long as you know what you want and how much pain you can tolerate, I guess that's what the future would hold for all of our organizations.
Great, excellent, thank you. Ankit, if you have a genie and you says, what do you want your vendors to do so have a very peaceful nights, what do you like to have?
Thanks, Pawan. So from my perspective, just a couple of very quick points to wrap it up. One is I think vendor agility is quite important. Also understanding from a value chain perspective where the vendor or the integrator is. Are they going to backward or forward integrate something which in due course of time will reduce complexity on the tool landscape for you, will make things simpler for you. The third part is in terms of complexity of implementing it versus the delivery that you're going to get out of it. One could have a much more painful transition if the end goals are that much sweeter. So from my perspective, I think it's the final things thought to leave with is, where are you using technology? Are you using it for simple, repeatable things? Are you going to use it to replace people, make things simpler, faster, cheaper, better? Or are you actually trying to reduce complexity by bringing in technology to do some heavy lifting, so your decision making can be that much more better? I think those are the three or four areas. Thanks.
Thanks. Maybe Dhaval, your point, I know you want one thing, that please give some sense to the procurement team, but apart from that, what do you want to have?
Yeah. No, I think as many have said, I think integrations are very important in my perspective. Like, to run a successful organization, you need marketing, sales, legal, all of this to work together, right, in silos. Similarly, to have a successful resiliency program, you need multiple systems and they all need to be integrated and talk to each other. Second thing is definitely innovation. As we said that, the dependency on technology is increasing. So the security, privacy, availability, redundancy, all of this need to evolve together and not in silos. And the last thing is definitely, as you said, there is no one size fits all, right? So we cannot take a solution and say it works for all the geographies in the same way, it works for all the companies in the same way. So a really thought process has to be put in as to how this will work with the local regulations, compliance, for a different type of culture of the organization, for large, small, all of these things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think fantastic. We are just in nick of a time, I think 45 seconds. So I'll just like to thank all the, I think it was fantastic, and so many different point of views, starting from Dr. Gaurav, and we ended at Dhaval. I think excellent points by Eugene and Ankit. This thing is, yes, technology is a boon, but it can be a disaster also. We can create a disaster by implementing a technology if it is not thought through correctly, or if it is not implemented correctly. So I'll end at that. There are questions which are asked by various, I think, people. May I request panelists to answer that? It is in the question answer box, and right dot on 45 minutes. I think I hand it over back to Sushil. Thanks a lot for sparing time and having this was a great session. Thank you very much.
And a good round of applause to all the panelists, please.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan, for winding up on time and making my job easier. And thank you all the panelists for those wonderful insights. I think I've taken pages and pages worth of notes, which hopefully should benefit all of us in times to come. And moving on from there, so I think this was highlighted during the first panel and during the second panel as well, that something that business continuity managers and business heads should be continuously on the lookout for is information, the right kind of information, the right kind of intelligence to help them make informed business decisions. Now, we are all aware that information overload is something that all of us face today. So we need three things today as business continuity managers and business heads. In terms of intel, we need three things. One is that we should be able to cut the clutter and get what is required. Second is that we should get intelligence and not mere information. And the third is that how do we bypass the noise which has been created by the enormous social media influx. So for that, what we have done in MitKat is that we have created a platform which is AI driven, which has our own algorithms. We understand the business, we understand the kind of risk that businesses are trying to address. And based on that, we try and give credible and authentic intelligence, which is from informed sources. We try and use trend analysis to make it as predictive as possible. And the third part is which something helps all of you to save time and effort, is that it's something which is ready-made, which is pushed into your plate rather than going in for a line and standing for a bewildering buffet of information. So with all that in mind, our technology team and our predictive risk intelligence team at MitKat has created a platform which would be really useful for security managers, business continuity managers, and everyone who is in the space of identifying risks to their businesses. So with that, I'll take you to our PRI team, the Predictive Risk Intelligence team. We have Madhura, one of our senior analysts, who's on the call. She will give you a quick demonstration in the next 8 to 10 minutes on this platform. And those of you who have questions or those of you who want to know more about it, please drop us a line. We would be happy to arrange a one-on-one demonstration, which would be more detailed, of course, and more customized to your specific business requirements. So thank you, and over to you, Madhura. All the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Madhura, and I hope everybody is doing well. So just let me know when you can share my when you can see my screen. I hope my screen is visible, right?
Not yet. We're just waiting.
Okay.
Yes, it is now.
It is, right? Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So as Sushil sir has already introduced, that this is MitKat's Risk Intel portal. And now once you use your credentials, you will be redirected to the first page, that is the risk tracker. Now, as the name suggests, it tracks all the risk that has already been shared with you by MitKat's team of subject matter experts. And the alerts or the events will be reflected on the right-hand side of your screen. The entire screen comes with an interactive map. And once you hover, you will see several diamond-shaped icons. Now, once you hover your mouse over the icon, you will see a succinct summary of the event. Now, once you click on the event, you will be redirected to a more detailed version of the event, which will come with the title, the date, the tracking ID, description, background, impact analysis, and recommendations and the sources. Now, in case any event is live and requires day-long monitoring, that will reflect on the current event section. And in case any event has related updates from its state of origin, that will be reflected on the related event section. All the three sections can be downloaded in the form of a PDF for internal circulation. There is also a feature called affected entity. This basically helps you determine whether your asset locations falls under the radar of this particular event or not. Now, this risk tracker also comes with filter options. The first one is the search by keyword. Over here, you can just do a keyword search to declutter the information that's already on the screen. We also have a filter option over here. In the filter option, you can go back up to 5 days, as well as you can apply several other filters depending on the type of event, type of risk, level of risk, and the region. Now we also have certain visual features that you can add. So first is over here you can add the terrain for a more elaborate visual representation, as well as the satellite where you will get the labels as well. Also from the settings option, with just one click, you can delve between the day mode as well as the light mode. Moving on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see several features. I'll take you one by one. The first is the event archive section. The event archive section is basically a repository of all the events that has been shared with you. In case you want to go back to a particular event, all you have to do is type out or paste the unique tracking ID over here and click on search. You can also do the same with the by month as well. All you have to do is select the month, select the year, and click on download button. And an Excel file comprising of all the details will be downloaded. Next is the upcoming event section. As the name suggests, it reflects all the relevant information that are still ongoing and will have relevance in the upcoming days or upcoming weeks. It helps your team devise or revise mitigative measures accordingly. Next we have is the event calendar section. The event calendar section, it basically comprises of all the important dates pertaining to festivals or public holidays that might have certain impact on your business operations, for example, affecting the employee commute. It also gives you an overview of the annual disruptors, as well as tells you which event have an annual recurrence rate. You can filter by month, as well as by geographies, that is by different countries. Next, we have the weekly forecast section. The weekly forecast section is basically an amalgamation of the features that I have just demonstrated. Over here, you will see all the events that still have relevance in the upcoming week. And in case there are any dates that are already comprised in the event calendar section that falls in the upcoming week will also be reflected in this, but under this particular feature. This also comes with an interactive map, and you can also streamline your search option by geographies, by different geographical locations. Next, we have the kaleidoscope. So kaleidoscope is a bit different from the other tools that I have just shown in the sense that it is an analytical tool. It will help you understand how a particular event will pan out in future and whether the event has the potential to develop into a black swan or a gray rhino event or not. This section comprises of all the events that require active documentation and monitoring and are tracked on the basis of two scales, that is likelihood and impact. Now you have to click on a particular event and you will be taken to the more detailed version where you will see the interplay of factors that lead to the development as well as a forecast analysis. Now, in order to understand the meaning of the different quadrants, you have to click on the small interrogation marks below. And in order to understand the particular ratings that are there on the two scales, you have to click on the more info section and an elaborate description will appear on your screen. Next, we have the resource section. The resource section is basically a repository where all the MitKat's annual and semi-annual analysis are reflected over here. So you can download it in the form of a PDF as well. And these are in the form of all the analysis like advisories, periodic updates, special reports, risk reviews, blogs, podcasts are here. You can download as well as you can view it online. Next, we have the city brief section. The city brief section is basically a part of MitKat's travel risk advisories that MitKat provides on request. So for example, any business executive, they wants to travel to a particular region and and they just want to understand the general risk scenario or the general reputation of that particular city. All you have to do is select the country. I selected Nepal, and the city, I selected Kathmandu. So a one-pager, which is very comprehensive but very crisp document will appear. It will have all the necessary details of that city, like key features, useful mobile apps, major crimes, air pollution, etc. And also it will have recommendations, which are general recommendations, but comes very handy and effective, as well as the helpline numbers to fall back on in cases of emergencies. Next, we have the ask questions mechanism, which is the query response mechanism. This, I would say, is one of the USPs of MitKat's portal. Over here, all you have to do is type out the title of your query that you might have pertaining to an event that has already been shared with you or any upcoming event, and type out the details and click on submit. And our team of analysts will reach you with a response at the earliest. Moving on, we have the COVID-19 dashboard. So MitKat is one of the few organizations that have been tracking the COVID-19 trajectory from day one and are basically and have not yet stopped tracking the data pertaining to COVID-19. So the first section, you will see the national data. There are the total cases, the active cases, total deaths, total recoveries, total tests done, and the doubling rates. This comes with an interactive graph as well. Following that, the metro city section. Over here, you will get the same numbers that are the total COVID-19 cases, the deaths and the recoveries for each metro city, as well as the 24-hour changes that are denoted in red. Now, each city will have its own interactive graph over here adjacent to it, as well as the implemented measures that are the restrictions that are still relevant to these particular geographies. This can be downloaded in the form of a PDF as well. The last section is the state statistics section. Over here, it will give you the same COVID-19 data, but it is pertaining to particular states. It comes with an interactive graph as well as the implemented measures section. This can be downloaded in the form of a PDF as well for internal circulation. Finally, we have the COVID-19 advisory section. Over here, you will get all the COVID-19 related reports, for example, COVID-19 preventive measures, COVID-19 symptoms, India weekly report, etc. These reports, each report can be downloaded in the form of a PDF as well. Moving on. The next we have RHYME. RHYME basically stands for Risk and Intelligence Monitoring Engine. This is our homegrown AI-assisted OSINT tool, and it is one of the most sought after tool because of few features that I'll be just explaining. Number one is that it comes with geofencing and are customized for your asset locations, and it populates information, relevant information that suits your business operations directly from open media sources. And several features that I have just said are, number one is that RHYME never sleeps. So RHYME works 24/7. That's number one. Number two is RHYME populates data directly from open media sources across all levels. That is from local to regional to national to global, and across all types. That is from reliable to credible to social media handles of government authorities, as well as verified handles, as vernacular media handles, as well as popular media platforms. Now, RHYME also does a little bit of its own sentiment analysis, and it puts a color. The color denotes the risk level, as well as it also denotes the risk category. For example, critical infrastructure, crime, extremism, etc. Once you click on a particular alert, it will take you directly to the source. Now, RHYME also comes up with different filter options. I'll show you one by one. The first is here, the filter option. Once you click on the filter option, you will be able to lat long accordingly, as well as your risk categories and the relevancy. Next is the keyword monitor. So in the keyword monitor, all you have to do is you have to type out the keyword that you want to search, and you have to set the date and click on submit. And all the events that has that keyword within this date will be reflected in this section. And next is the event archive section. As I mentioned, that RHYME never sleeps. So in case your team has failed to monitor for a particular period of time, all they have to do is set the hours until when they have missed out. So you can go back as many hours as you want to and click on download, and an Excel file comprising of all the details will be downloaded. Also, RHYME, since I mentioned that RHYME takes information from vernacular language as well, and since it is a smart portal, what it does is it translates it into a readable English format and represents into your screen. Now, finally, we have the threat intelligence platform. This is a one-spot location for you to have a numerical evaluation of the impact of risk that is affecting your locations. So if you if you follow my cursor, the first feature is the organization risk rating. So this basically quantifies the impact of risk for your cumulative asset locations. So for example, currently the cumulative risk rating is showing 1.62. Now, in order to understand the risk rating for individual office locations, that will be demonstrated, that will appear just below the cumulative section over here. As you can see, Romania, Sri Lanka, everything is there. And in order to understand which events have contributed to this particular risk rating, you have to click on this small arrow, and a drop-down list will appear of all the events that has contributed to this particular risk rating. Now, over here, it is very important to note that the risk rating that you are seeing on screen is not calculated arbitrarily, but our smart tool, it basically assigns an average on the basis of the risk rating of events that has already been shared with you. Now, in MitKat, we rate risk on a scale of 0 to 5, where 0 to 1 is very low risk and 4 to 5 is very high risk. For example, the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Also, you can get the risk rating for the current time, as well as the past week, as well as the past month. Moving on, the next feature is the distribution of risk in percentage feature. Over here, this will give you an idea of the percentage of alerts or events that has been shared with you per risk category. Now, in view of the ongoing pandemic and the frequent regulatory changes and traffic restrictions, you will see that the percentage of alerts shared under regulatory and travel risk are more vis-a-vis other categories. It will also give you an idea of the number of events that are shared with you for your asset locations. It will also give you an idea of the major risk events that is affecting your organization depending on the topics, for example, COVID-19, Ukraine crisis, vaccination, etc. And also it will show you the top risks that are affecting your organization depending on the categories and the subcategories, like the central regulatory changes and etc. So with that, I come to the end of my demonstration, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Madhura, for that very sharp and crisp demonstration. And ladies and gentlemen, all those who are on the webinar, I'll request you that in case you are more interested in this and you want to know more about this, how it can benefit your organizations, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, and we should be very happy to arrange a specific and a customized demonstration for you and your internal teams. With that, I come to the third panel for today, which is, and we are heading right on time, which is going to be moderated by Mitesh on organizational resiliency and supply chain resiliency. What are the latest trends in the APAC region? And Mitesh is our director for the Asia Pacific region. He is based out of Singapore, a thorough professional and specially known in the business continuity space for many years. Mitesh has worked in and out of India in this space with multiple organizations, multiple technology tools which have enhanced business resilience. So I will not take up any more time and hand over to Mitesh to introduce his panel and for the discussion. Over to you, Mitesh.
Hello, can you hear me? Just give me a check.
Yep.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yep.
Mitesh,
okay, thanks. I think I have my panel with me, and I think the other two panel moderators are definitely jealous of my panel to begin with. I have some very much heavyweights in my panel, right? So I have two lifetime achiever awards plus somebody who has been in the BCI world for quite some time, and people who have been founders in their own regions for business continuity. We have those personnel in our panel. So begin with, I would like to take a bit of time to just introduce the topic. So we are talking about much more supply chain resilience, and I would like to talk a bit about it before I proceed in introducing my panel members. So first of all, no one today will dispute that COVID-19 actually significantly disrupted global supply chains. For at least a significant amount of time, people had to re-strategize their ways, and something they had never seen for decades. Such kind of challenge. Why I say, because either it was any disruption with regards to supply chain either impacted one part of the geography, either Southeast Asia or Europe or probably Americas, but it never was a global disruption that impacted everything. So organizations changed their strategies. So what happened was the traditional strategies of nearshoring, farshoring, multi-sourcing, localization, better inventory management, just in time, a lot of that, they had to relook it. Why they had to relook it? Because they had to address new age disruptions as well. And what I believe is, in today's world, when we talk about supply chain resilience, I personally am a firm believer that everybody today, every individual, corporate, non-corporate, every individual, we are global consumers. We consume goods and services that originate not just in the local region where we reside, but it can be any part of the world. So let me cite a story here. So I have two daughters. So my elder daughter is about 9 years now, and when she was in grade 3 last year, the teacher had given them an interesting project, and this is a true story, okay, not making up for supply chain resilience. So she got a project where she had to identify, what foods they have in the house and where do they come from, how much have the food traveled to reach to their plate. Okay, so it was a very interesting exercise, and I was doing with her because it was work from home, and she was attending the class from there. So the parent has to do part of the exercise with the kid. So while doing this exercise, it was brought to notice that most of the items that we had at home were not originating from Singapore. In fact, I would say almost everything. So we had the groceries, probably because I'm from India, some of the groceries coming from India. We had baked beans coming from the UK, bananas from the Philippines, apples, oranges from China, and chocolates from Europe. I mean, completely from every part of the world, we had something. And that made me realize, and my kid, that one plate of meal that we have today at our home, it is actually a global meal, food grains that we're having from multiple regions and sources. So what it made me realize is that supply chain plays so important part. A smooth supply chain that is working so for so many years, we never come to notice and give kudos to the people that run it, because what it is doing is it is enabling a smooth flow of not just operations, but also what we eat and live on a day-to-day basis. I was also reading an article for this. A laptop being made, we actually consume minerals from almost 25 different geographies. We use different parts from different parts of the world, and that is very important. Coming back, a very recent incident, also not maybe timely for the forum. Singapore is currently facing supply chain disruption with regards to chicken sourcing. Okay, so from 1st June, Malaysia has stopped exports of chicken because of cost escalation internally that's happening. And you would be surprised to know Singapore's dependency on Malaysia for chicken is so much that almost 1/3 of the chicken comes from there. However, everything the larger supermarkets have assured that we have many much, but it has suddenly given a lot of media rumoring around that what will happen if such a thing stops. So that when studying all of this, we realize that supply chain play a very important role in terms of not just business continuing, but our personal work life continuation as well. I was reading an article by McKinsey, and it wrote that supply chain disruptions cost an average of about 45% of 1 year's profit over a course of a decade. So that is what the scale is. With that, I would go in a different way. I have 4 heavyweights in my panel, okay, and I'll introduce each one before the question is answered, because I want to give you leverage of understanding the audience, with their profile in detail. So first, in no particular order, so we just decided this order. So we are talking about R. Vaidyanathan, fondly called as RV, a very well-renowned space name in the Indian organization resilience, risk management, and information security space. He's been an industry leader for quite some time, over 30 years of experience in this space. Currently, he's serving as vice president and CISO for Skybuzz. He has done a lot of consulting assignments in the various industries, right from IT services, BPO, banking, insurance, retail, and manufacturing. He's an auditor as well. He has been an auditor as well, over 200 days of training and over 700 hours of audit training. RV is an active member of the Bureau of Indian Standards. He's responsible for currently an ISO standard, which is in under development, ISO TC 292, if I'm not wrong. RV has received DRI Lifetime Achievement Award in 2020. He has been inducted as BCI Hall of Fame Award 2019 under the Industry Personality category. He has been winner of the CIR Lifetime Achievement Award as well. RV, this should make you feel very old, I must say. All these awards, because lifetime achievement is almost
age is just a number. Age is just a number.
Okay, great. Okay, so I mean, that's why I said we have a lot of heavyweights, and what I would like to understand, and probably based on your varied experience across multiple geographies, handling business continuity for a long time, handling risk management, and seeing post and pre-COVID, can you highlight the measures, probably towards supply chain continuity in the pre-pandemic era and the post-pandemic era? And also probably you can touch upon a bit of how organizations change their way of doing supply chain continuity based on your experience in the recent times. Over to you.
Thanks, Pritesh. Let me first of all thank MitKat for having me as one among the astronauts into this MitKat Mars. I'll be happy to share my experience. And if I have to probably share my experience over the last 3 decades, the first decade, I would like to probably make it as 90s to 2000, 2000 to 2010, and 2010 to 2020, because pre and post, whatever they asked for. So when 90 to 2000, I mean, if I can again pick up supplies as the acronym, it started out with when the focus was nobody probably would know about a supply chain resiliency or supply chain management or whatever be it. So starting with it was more focused on servicing whatever that you do, because I was actually into a service engineer role, taking care of local area networks and all those. And that point in time, it was more towards ensuring that utilities of a particular facility is available. SU, then a P on something on paper, whatever that you want to have it, and then positioning it only for the requirement of whatever that you need to do it. and just a lone vendor. Man, it may not be a multiple vendor and all those that you look at, just in terms of service that you need to do it. Something was focused at that point in time, and a bare minimum inventory. So inventory that comes in, and an engagement base, and whatever standard that was coming up towards 2000 is something that was focused on the first 10 years, and just to ensure there could be a lot of downtime. There was no proactive planning, the reactive way of doing things, and all. And talking about the 2000 to 2010, you had the standards that was coming in, right from the BS 7799 to 25999s and all those 22301 to 227001, which actually probably called in for some kind of a security to be in place, including the vendor management and vendor security and all those. So that's where the entire part of the CIA, when you talk about confidentiality, integrity, availability was one part of it. I mean, so the confidentiality, integrity as a security. Now the same supplies got transformed slightly into a security focus. S, security, then U for a uptime, then P, penalty and other things that they need to pay. So they need to focus on that. Again, positioning, pitch and all those. Now, L, from a legislation perspective, the local legislation, the legal requirements and all those that was coming up, then the increased inventory, the engagements and all those standards requirement to meet the standard that was done between 2000 to 2010. But post that, if you look at it, as you said rightly, I mean, no single thing goes with a single person or a single vendor that works on, right from your food and whatever that you were giving an example of your children and all those. Man, I think that is where the organization basically understood what is the focus that they need to do. At that point in time, they had this business continuity management coming into place, and the dependency on each other stakeholders, interested parties, all those were coming into picture, and the BCM was a buzzword at that point in time. And today, I would say, yes, it has become a buzzword, the business word. Same way the resilience we talk about as a buzzword and now a buzzword. The point in time, what they have actually looked at, and from the 2010 to 2020 years, organizations were basically looking at putting in something in place, at least to identify the critical suppliers and those critical things as part of the business continuity plan. But gone are the days when I go back into 90 to 2000. I mean, there were something on a service engineer when I go into the field, certain things on a server based, like a biggest manufacturing company or anything on a banking level. I mean, you need to have the spares in place, but the specific spares may not be available and the inventory may not be available. But there are warehouses nearby in the location where you have to probably talk about and ask them to bring it directly to the service site and then fix it up. There could be a lot of downtime during the 90, 2000 and 2000 to 2010. Yes, some sort of inventory, some sort of facilities management, people available and all those that was focused on. And now focusing on the resources availability perspective, same thing from a people, premises, technology, information, stakeholders, all those when focused on from an information and a stakeholder perspective, they focus much on technology to an extent. But what happened to the people and the facilities perspective and all those from a supply chain perspective was something I would rather think of that was a total miss at that point. Now, from 2010 to 20, when towards the pandemic, when you look at it, even the people availability is something that was thought about and the resources, whatever that you're looking at. If I can quote an example of Amazon or the Big Basket, they had a lot of, from a daily orders that was coming from over 30,000 to now 3 lakh order that got boosted up. Something during the pandemic period from a Amazon perspective, they were not quick enough to take care of their people in terms of even the supply of a PPE equipment for their people for a delivery perspective was delayed. And they created a kind of a racket back into Amazon saying that the people, human beings are not taken care and all those. And it took a bit of time in March 2020. Same way from a perspective of Big Basket, they had the orders. Man, it's a kind of, I would say, the positive risk or an opportunity that became a kind of a risk for them in terms of delivering it, and later brought in people of restaurants and other people to probably deliver it. This is a kind of a reactive mechanism, though it was handled and agile way of handling it, all those that we saw during this period. So having said that, identifying a critical supplier, was there a very clear due diligence at that point in time? I would rather say a yes and a no. On a percentage basis, maybe about 10 to 15% of the organization were doing it where it is mandatory, as I said, as a requirement of their engagements or a standard and legal requirement that they would have done. But nobody would have thought about it as a point of a time which need to be probably addressed. Now, coming back to the post-pandemic utopia, when all these were felt that the supplier chain or supply chain continuity, all those need to be looked at. It's not always only the manufacturing or logistics that gets impacted. Even today, in many case studies, many things that you get inside, it still talks about the manufacturing and the logistics part of it in predominantly. But whereas a lot of our organization into service also are looking at in terms of delivering services, what is the entire supply chain that is required? So that need to be a focus that need to be doing. And there, a very clear policy from the central team, the procurement team, is being worked out. And with the already identified the critical suppliers, what is the criteria to identify critical suppliers? There could be about 15, 20,000 suppliers in an organization, big corporates, whatever they're looking at. So if they have to probably zero it down to a 700 or 500, the critical suppliers, what are those in terms of single point of contact, single point of failure, a single vendor, or multi-locations, and all those that need to be probably looked at, and that's probably falling in place. And due diligence is part of the policy, and any new vendor, the existing vendor that they come in, they again go back and do a kind of assessment and audit. And a new vendor, when they comes in, it comes into due diligence. And finally, this becomes a kind of a complete Deming cycle PDCA in terms of looking at it as an overall period on a periodical basis, and also involving the suppliers in terms of the exercise that they do, the simulation exercise, and slightly modifying your BIA dependency on vendors, identifying key suppliers, and also doing a joint exercise along with the suppliers. It could be a simulation exercise because you cannot really bring out a complete real-time exercise with the suppliers. These are certain things that is falling in place today from an overall perspective of supply chain management and the continuity and resilience towards that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, RV. I think that was very much comprehensively answered. I like the way you have brought the journey to it. So it started off with probably servicing the client towards then complying towards the regulators and the client to regulate whatever requirements were there. And now it is moving towards a way where purely looking at actual incidents that have resulted in disruption. They are moving into a journey where suppliers are being part of the ecosystem of doing their audits, not just a checklist based approach, but also making sure they are part of their real exercises. It can be simulation depending upon the nature of service or product being offered. So thank you RV for that one. With that, I'd like to move to our next panel member. So we have with us Mr. Wasim Malik. Wasim Malik has been personally a very good mentor for me, and it is a great pleasure to have him in the panel discussion today. Wasim has been the global head of GRC for Bravura Solutions and is currently based out of Sydney. He's currently taking this call out of Sydney. Wasim Malik has over 22 years of experience in business resilience and risk management and across multiple geographies, including Australia, New Zealand, supporting geographies of probably New Zealand, UK, Poland, and probably working in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain initially for initial part of his working career. Mr. Wasim has been a big advocate of ESG and resilience because he believes that the way forward after organization resilience, more and more organizations would move towards ESG in the coming years. He has implemented a lot of business continuity standards with regards to right from BS 56 to BS 25999 to ISO 22301. Even Bravura Solutions is ISO 22301 certified. Mr. Wasim Malik has been inducted in BCI Hall of Fame. So second person after RV, and in this panel member who has been in 2018. He was also nominated for a Lifetime Achievement Award by DRI for 3 consecutive years. He's winner of the BCI Hall of Fame in 2018 with winner of BCI Global 2018 and Australasian Awards in 2016 and 18. With that, sir, a very, very warm welcome to this discussion. Okay, and my question to you would be with regards to suppliers. So given the increase of dependency on suppliers, And I'm saying, again, not just we're talking about the manufacturing, but also service industries, and you are in the service industry. How do organizations ensure that the vendor and supply BC programs are pragmatic? Now, why I'm asking this is because I know now most of the organizations do check on suppliers, whether you have a business continuity program and what is furnished is a BCP plan. Okay, it's a document checklist. So how are we moving towards it? And if you can throw some more lights about whether internally, do you think supply chain teams are interacting with BC teams, or they're still working in silos, something on those lines. So how are we making it much more practical in today's time? Over to you, Mr. Wasim.
Sure. Thanks, Mitesh. First of all, thanks for MitKat for inviting me to this valuable webinar. And I was part of the first two sessions as well. And then what I believe is, of course, I'm going to share very humbly my knowledge, but at the same time, I learned a lot from the earlier two sessions, because I believe every day you learn. And the day you stop learning is the day when you will die, actually. So I think this is what my message to all my team or my colleagues as well, that you have to keep learning every day. So thanks again. So now, and thanks, Arvi, for sharing your, a very holistic view of how we have, in the past few decades, and then where we are with respect to supply chain resilience. But I will address more at the operational level, because this is what I have discovered, especially in COVID. So the way I feel BCM is like a sandwich, we are in the middle. So as we are in the service industry and for the supply chain resilience, we have all the time been audited by our clients. And then we have to all the time audit our vendors as well. And then answering specific to your question now, that how the vendor management or the business continuity management, are they working in silos? Now, what I have discovered in other organizations as well, and the way I see it more pragmatic, now I see is as you have mentioned that I'm heading globally the GRC function. So I see this more as a GRC. It has to be managed centrally, so it cannot work in silos. So the way historically some organizations are working like business continuity, and that has been the case before COVID even. So all the time we have been audited, and as part of the audit, like, have we checked that our critical vendors can continue their critical services? So we were auditing them all the time. So information security on the other side, they were auditing their vendors as well, but then again, working in silos. So workspace or the facilities, they were auditing their vendors from health and safety or for environment perspective. And then we all were approaching the same vendors from, let's say, 3, 4, or 5 dimensions. And then there is an overlap. As if you are familiar, one of the domains, for example, in information security is business continuity. So we were approaching the same vendor for BCM from BCM team, and then information security, they were also approaching the same vendor for BCM. And then you cannot have many resources for each team to follow up with the vendors. So you may not have a very optimum solution in place. You might end up sending a questionnaire. This is what I have discovered in many organizations. But then you do not have a capacity to do the follow-up, that if they have sent you the response or not. And if they have sent, you do not have a capacity to analyze their responses and then to do a proper risk management or vendor risk management or risk profiling. So the optimum solution that I would suggest is we need to centralize it. You cannot afford to work in silos. You need to do a proper risk profiling. And now, as you mentioned, that I'm a big advocate of the ESG, and then there is not too much of a pressure from ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance at the moment. But now I have seen a lot of focus in the last few years on the ESG. So having a business continuity, we need to make sure our vendors, if they are business continuity compliant, if they are information security, health and safety, environmental, ESG, modern slavery, and there are so many. Every day we get to know that now there are more regulations that we need to make sure that they are compliant. And if we're going to continue working, in silos, then of course we need more resources. That is not an optimal solution. So yes, operationally, that's how I see it, that it has to be centralized, it has to work in sync, and it has to be part of the GRC, or if not part of the GRC, because different organizations work differently now. So, but this function need to be centralized. It need to work closely with the procurement, because procurement get involved in the due diligence when the vendors you get the vendors on board. but then maybe you may not doing the due diligence on an annual basis. So yes, all these entities need to work very closely and in integration way. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I like the theme. So the theme to the solving of issue one of the problem statements that we have come is because it's multi-pronged approach towards vendor risk management. Get it centralized, so that will solve partial problems at least at level 1 itself. So that's a good learning to be taken by all professionals today. Okay,
and,
with
and,
that,
and one more thing to add now, it's
yes,
not
please.
only the third party now. You need to, in some cases, you need to make sure about the fourth party and the fifth party resilience as well. And if
Correct.
it is not centralized, then you're not going to make sure. You can have a tick box, but you are not really ensuring the resilience of your critical processes.
Yes. Okay, that's great. But let me just be cognizant of time and move towards our next participant, my panel member here. So with that, let me move to Mr. Agni. Agnidipta Sarkar is a very well-renowned evangelist in the digital resilience, cybersecurity, business continuity space. He has also worked extensively in the data privacy and risk optimization space. Agni personally has contributed with regards to international standards of ISOs, along with the other standards. He has also worked with Cloud Security Alliance, NIST, and the BCI, Business Continuity Institute. I have always found Agni to be very, very responsive on WhatsApp groups where there are any questions asked with regards to either information security or digital resilience. He always likes to contribute and take and give his opinions with regards to the problem statements arising from members. He has also spoken on multiple forums, including Gartner, Forbes, Foundry, ISMG, and others. In addition to helping a few startups, Agni is also leading a panel to build a standard on cyber resilience for the ISO Mirror Committee in India. With that, Agnida, over to you. And my question to you would be, okay, on a personal note, he's the group CISO for Biocon, but today he's representing on his own at this forum level. Okay. My question to you, Agnida, would be with regards to now, how should organization manage continuity in supply chain given the rate of digital transformation that is happening within organizations? So we are seeing organizations like never before. So this in the last probably maybe 3 years, and probably now what we are going to see, the rate of digitization has been multifold. It has never seen, it is unprecedented, to be honest. And so with the adoption of digitization, our dependency on technology partners have increased. And this technology partners could be anything, right from a visitor management system, which is a technology partner, to a cybersecurity product, to a SAP system helping us manage HRMS, inventory, or so on and so forth. So how do organization, or how should organization manage continuity of supply chain with regards to when services comes concerned, or where digital transformation has been outpaced the level which we have never seen? So over to you with regards to your thoughts on this question, please.
So first of all, thank you for having me here. But before I proceed, please tell me how much time I have, because the answer to your question could be 2 hours.
Okay, so we can start with 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, probably now much than earlier, digital transformation is on the anvil. And I tell people that if you're not planning for resilience, and if you're walking into digital transformation, it is like walking blindfolded on a minefield. Because what will happen as we go forward is that our dependence on digital systems is only going to increase substantially.
Yeah.
Think about ordering food on Swiggy, as simple as that, or any other app that you have in Singapore or whatever country that you are in. The dependence has gone to a stage that if one day that app goes down, a lot of people struggle where to go and eat. This is just a humorous take on digital transformation, but on a more serious note, think about those manufacturing companies who put in, let's say, very expensive stuff into their machines. And if those machines go from a manual mode to digital mode, and then there is a disruption, you can't shut the machine down because you're going to lose up a lot of money, and yet you can't continue because your systems have been disrupted. So we are entering that phase where digital resilience will probably be something that organizations will need to think naturally, and your statement about Wasim, and I would say that one of his favorite topic, ESG now has to think about sustainable digital resilience. That's the future, is where we are going. And unlike earlier, where most of the business continuity disruptions were fire, hail, flood, earthquake, today's digital resilience, digital disruptions are, or rather today's disruptions are more digital in nature. So, people are, CISOs like me, we are constantly on our toes, because we have to not only protect the organization from what we see is a proliferation of technology, but we have to deal with something absolutely abstract. Let me give you an example. So last year, many of us have heard about solar winds getting impacted. Basically, someone injected a small, malware called Sunburst into the SolarWinds tool, which was deployed by many organizations. I believe 18,000 downloads and probably still counting. And that malware was the cause of much disruption. Governments, civic bodies, and a lot of enterprises went through hell, much more than what was reported in the news. Then there was the Kaseya vulnerability, and so on and so forth. What we are also seeing is that, earlier, if you were a product manufacturer, especially hardware, you wouldn't worry so much about security. But right now, product companies manufacturing chips, manufacturing hardware, manufacturing, there are so many different things that is happening. Not only those, SaaS-based services, they are extremely worried that they could have a product in the market and it could have malware in it, and they don't know about it unless they have practices in place which prevent such things from happening. So I don't know whether it makes sense that everybody on this panel comes with an experience which is at the confluence of cybersecurity, business continuity, and privacy and risk. But that's so much more important today. A lot of people who I know call me a digital resilience guy, but I believe there are many, many like me who are talking digital resilience today and trying to evangelize that in a large manner. And it not only starts from business continuity part. I mean, you could write a BCP about how IT will recover your systems. But as I was telling somebody on the other panel, imagine you have ransomware. All right. So there would be an IT team which would be involved in recovering from backups and all that, provided you have planned for it. But there's a much bigger issue. The bigger issue is you'd realize that, sometime later that you just need to pay ransom because two systems that you can't do without don't have backups or don't have that kind of backup that you want to recover. And I'm not talking about small companies or large companies. We've seen this across the whole spectrum of the industry. Now, the challenge is there is an impact on market, so the CFO will get involved. There is an impact on stakeholders, so the sales teams will get involved. So there is an impact on operations, so the operations teams will get involved. Now, nobody knows what to do. And if it comes down to a situation that you need to now buy Bitcoins to pay off the perpetrator, you don't know how to buy Bitcoins because that's not part of your standard financing system, right? There are ways and means to do it. But the point that I'm trying to make is time has come to build playbooks for cyber resilience. And these playbooks are not something that you build at a technology level. These are playbooks for the C-suite, for CXOs. They need to understand that if something like this happens, and I'm not only talking about ransomware, it could be something that you trusted, because today's cybersecurity systems are so strong that, of the 5 kind of attacks, the third, which is somebody trying to come with a hammer into your organization, does not happen much. I mean, we do see a lot of attacks on our gateways, but you don't see a situation where a real attacker is trying to come in through the main gate. What they try is obfuscation. They try to steal your identity. So dark web monitoring becomes so much more important. You need to know if your identities are away on the out on the web, right? Then you have endpoint laptops getting stolen. So Then you have people attacking your applications where credentials are not very strong. But the most important is when people throw out information from inside the organization to outside, right? So if you look at this whole spectrum of issues that you are looking at, as more and more organizations get into digital mechanism or are digitizing their current operations, they need to understand that digital resilience is not something that is an IT activity. It extends itself to a lot of other things. You know, the other day I was talking to somebody who had a fireproof safe. So the records were in fireproof safe. Very good. So when the audit was done, it was found that the fireproof safe is accessed every hour. So the guy who accesses it, he practically keeps it open, because otherwise he has to come in every time and he has to rotate that wheel and open the fireproof safe. Now, if there is fire, the fire will actually burn whatever you're supposed to be protecting the fireproof safe with. So this is just a very small example of what we tend to miss out when we are looking at the whole digital resilience thing. I don't know if I answered your question fully.
No, you answered. I think what I learned is two important things, that we have to have a new generation digital resilience playbook. Okay, it has to be new gen. It has to address today's cyber risk or
one last thing.
Sure.
You have to also understand that today's businesses are of two types: those which are born on the cloud and those who are migrating to the cloud.
Got it.
If your business is not doing either, then your dependence on digital systems is not high. Now, if you consider this situation, each of these organizations, those who are migrating and those who are born, have a completely different set of digital resilience challenges.
Correct. Got it. And also, I think I like the idea that sometimes when we talk about all of this, it is not. It has to be driven from the top. The C-suite has to get actively involved. When I say actively, they have to have quarterly, 6 monthly meetings on understanding what is happening around it and probably participate in tests and whatever. Actively, it cannot be passive. So thanks Agnida for a wonderful insight on the supply chain resilience, specifically on the digital adoption side. With that, allow me to move to Mr. Mel Capital. Okay, Mel, allow me to introduce him. Again, Mel has been a very good friend. We know each other from, I think, 5-6 years since the first time I met him in the Philippines in my previous organization. It's my privilege to probably have Mel on the panel discussion today. Mel is the country manager for technology support services for IBM Philippines, where he's responsible for supporting and keeping the critical IT infrastructure up and running for various organizations and enterprises in the Philippines. Mel has been a big advocate of business continuity in the country, and which encouraged him to start an association which is called BCMAP, Business Continuity Managers Association of the Philippines, which was founded in probably 2005, where he was the first president. He also formalized it as a non-profit NGO in 2011. Currently, BCMAP has over 200 corporate and individual members with a common vision of promoting the art and science of business continuity and organization resilience. They also represent the DRI in the Philippines, and Mel has been a prolific speaker in multiple forums. They do organize their yearly chapters, yearly conferences, which is very well received. More than 200-250 people come. Mel, on that note, allow me to ask you a question. This question is a bit more mixed, okay, probably. So there has been a constant change in the geopolitical dynamics as well in the region. I'm talking about APAC itself. We have multiple geopolitical changes that have happened. And have organizations revisited their supply risk management predominantly from your experience, which you can cite? And also because given that Philippines is typically considered a service-oriented industry, there are manufacturing setups, but more and more Philippines is the go-to service-oriented country globally. How did organizations manage challenges during the COVID time for supply chain disruptions? And I know there have been multiple incidents on availability of IT devices, etc., right from laptops to VPNs to so on. So whether the geopolitical dynamics impact disruptions which are supply chain, and how do organizations then manage it, would be my questions in a short format. Yeah, over to you, Mel.
Thank you very much, Mitesh. Thank you very much for inviting BCMAP. We are really very much honored to be part of this forum. And I'm very humbled to be part of this team panel with Wasim, RV, and Agni. Very esteemed professionals in business continuity arena, right? They are lifetime achievement awards, and definitely the organization where I had will really learn a lot, from these gentlemen. So we are honored to be part of this forum, and we really appreciate you inviting BCMAP to this forum. Thank you to MitKat and MReach, who's been supporting BCMAP over the years in the Philippines. Yeah, and to your question, Mitesh, I thought you were asking me that question because Philippines is probably one of the most geopolitical country in this region, right? We just had our national election a month ago, and a new president will take over by July 1. But it is what it is. Our as you said, our region has varying degrees of geopolitical concerns or issues. And now that we just had a pandemic, not so much on Asia Pacific, the biggest geopolitical issue that we're worried is the Ukraine and Russia war, right? Definitely considering the geopolitical instability in most of our countries, the Ukraine and Russia war has impacted supply chain particularly. From a population perspective, the 7.8 billion of world population, 4.8 billion of those population actually comes from Asia, right? And it's a consumer-driven country, so to speak, right? You can just imagine the impact of food, the lack of supply of food, the lack of supply of materials, and the lack of supply of energy in each of these countries. However, if you look at all the countries that we have in Asia, India, China, Philippines, Singapore, we are not monolithic. We all have our own concern. So the point that I'm making is from a geopolitical perspective, all of our countries, we have to view it differently. We have to view it differently, and we have to approach it independently. That's one thing that we need to address. However, the beauty of that 4.8 billion population in this part of the world, even though we rely on food, energy, and materials for import, all of our countries are also self-sustaining. We have signed up with our own free trade agreements across countries, all of us helping each other. I'm not sure about Malaysia or Singapore, though, in terms of chicken, but it is something that the power of these countries working together in terms of supply chain, minus the geopolitical issue that we have, is what keeps me active and really optimistic on the growth of the business in this particular area. From a supply chain perspective, the impact really is severe for a geopolitical issue. But once we work together as countries who have our own strengths and weaknesses, and we have our own products to supply with, I think we will even grow as a region. I read a report from economic perspective from Asian Development Bank, and India is saying that you will have an inflation by about 6%. And I think it's probably one of the highest. China, its GDP will only be at about 5.5%, which is one of the lowest for the past decade. So from an economic perspective, the outlook is not good. But from working together as various countries, helping each other in terms of supply chain, looking for sources in various countries, really understanding what can India bring to the table, what can Philippines bring to the table, and what can other countries bring to the table will really make a difference in terms of supply chain. So I guess that's my key point. Thank you, Mitesh.
Thanks.
Over to you.
Yes. So I wanted to have a quick, probably question for all the panel, and we are a bit short on time, but I'd like to understand. So what is happening is you are a supplier to few clients, and you are also a vendor for some people, right? So what has happened is, we all understand that as supply chain, as part of the supply chain, you do a lot of checklist-based approach, probably signing up that your resiliency is strong. How can organizations, probably one point from each member, how can organizations move away from a very mundane activity of a checklist-based signing off of documents that, okay, your supply chain is strong, towards a much more practical approach, wherein I do not have to worry that 100 companies are going to come and must probably ask for me that your resilience is okay, versus is there a standardization that would be available in the years to come, or what we can do about it? So we'll start with RV again. What are your thoughts on this? And probably we'll have to keep it a bit short, RV, on the answer.
Okay, right. So especially focusing on the digital way of doing things, I would rather think of, even from a Gartner report, when I saw most of the organizations are looking towards getting on the digital way of doing things, and including the supplier continuity and whatever that they're talking about. And they also look at getting into digital way of doing it, collaboration increases, and also the kind of effort and revenue is going to be pretty much doubling in the next couple of years or something we hear. Given that as a background, I would rather think of kind of a digital way of self-declaration by the suppliers is something that we can think of, in a common portal. Maybe a consortium kind of a thing could probably be coming up, and common platform would be there. And whatever area that they have to further dwell down, they can always probably do it. And that would be one thought process I have.
Yeah, that's a very, so probably, having some standardized body that would be probably doing this at a blanket level could help. Okay. Wasim sir, probably any thoughts on that? So any tips so that vendors can improve their resiliency quotient without entering repetitive compliance cycles?
No, I think this is what exactly. So I'll detail what RV said. That could be a portal or could be a consortium where, that one body can, verify your resilience or any other assurance that your clients need. And then definitely the clients can subscribe to that consortium or a portal, so that you don't have to go through the same repetitive course. I would add one thing though, but, like getting certified through ISO, we one time thought that could be enough for us to get away from those audits, but no, it definitely helped, but it's not going to waive your obligation to go through the client audits.
Correct. So I always say this, and ISO is not a license that you will never make mistakes, okay, or you will never have disruptions. So many organizations who are ISO certified do have regular disruptions in their roles. Okay, over to you, Agni. Any thoughts on this? Because I know you are not a big proponent. During our discussion on ISOs, please.
So no, I'm a big proponent of standardization.
Okay.
In fact, very big. One of the things that I think every leader should do is focus on standardization. But I have a different view on using a third party as a certificate. Okay. And that view is that the applicability and the details need to be transparent. It's not merely a certificate. So somebody gives me a 27001 certificate and says that proves that my SaaS service, which is going to collect information from you, is going to keep it safe. It's not, because the ISO 27001 contains a list of 114 controls, which are about to become 92. And each of those controls there is a reason that they built a statement of applicability.
Correct.
So when you give me a certificate and you tell me that that's enough, it's not, because I need to know whether you tick marked on that particular statement of applicability that applies to my business.
Okay.
And that is the view for everybody. So if we are going to have a mechanism where a third party, and I'm with RV and Wasim about having such a third party body which does keep the resiliency score for everybody. But there is essential need for that transparency that says that if you are going to use this, you also get access to where are the areas that that company has said that they're good for and they were assessed about it.
Okay. So a bit more detailed approach of when you give the certificate itself is not good enough. You need an SOA for
that's the problem with the 27001 approach.
Correct. That I abide by that. Okay, with that, let's move to Mel. Mel, any thoughts about standardization? I'm asking you specifically because you are a technology services country manager, and you would be supporting a number of government organizations and probably private institutions in Philippines. Yeah. And I'm sure you would require your more than 30% of time would have given in compliances, managing compliances. So over to you. I would love to hear.
That is really correct. And I agree with Agni. Standardization is key. However, as Agni pointed out, there's just so much control and data that you need to process, right? So the only thing that you would be able to really manage this kind of control information and be able to process it is to really do automation and analytics. right? With all of these controls coming in, with all of the growth coming in for all our enterprises, we will not be able to process this much data without analytics and automation, right? So it's important, whether you're a third-party service provider, whether you're doing controls for your own company, you need to start considering how you do automation and analytics, so that you will be able to survive all the changes and all the supply issues that will happen over the years.
Okay.
Thank you, Mitesh.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, it brings to the end of our panel discussion, but we would like to have one closing remark from each panel discussion. It can be either a theme word, a value system that can enable organizations or individuals to be better supply chain resilient, or it can be a punchline from you guys that will help us remember your thoughts in a very long way. Yeah, Arvi, over to you. We start with that same order.
Maybe the supply chain resilience would be at its best if you have the chain of command at every level with accountability and central governance. That would be my first part. And specifically, if you look at aligning the procurement strategy onto the supplier relationship and the digital transformation would be the best part going forward digital.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Wasim?
My punchline is ESG. So I think we should not ignore ESG. I think we should start focusing on the ESG. So I think it's not only essential, or I think for the business continuity or resilience, but I think I see that as a career progression as well for the business resilience professionals. So I think ESG is the way to go. That's how I see it.
Okay, great. Agnida, anything from your side?
I think Wasim is correct. The keyword that I had in my mind is sustainable. No matter what you do, your digital resilience program, your business continuity program, supply chain security has to be sustainable.
Fair enough.
Without that, it can't.
I'll add a word flexible to it. It has to meet the change of time. Yeah, okay. Next one, we will have Mel.
Well, in my case, it's integrity and trust. It's supplier.
Okay.
Trust, you have to trust your supplier, but at the end of the day, the supplier has to have that integrity for you to trust them.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, I'm very pleased to highlight that we had a very good session. Hope the audience had a lovely time because we still have about 180 odd participants still listening to us, which is great. Over to you, Sushil sir, or Sam sir, whoever is pointing out the closing remarks. Thanks for the time, everyone.
Thank you, Mitesh, and to your entire panel for a really engaging and educative discussion. I think we all learned a lot, and as I always do, I take a lot of notes. So thank you everyone for those pearls of wisdom. With that, we would come to the end of today's session, and to close the session and to summarize the session, we have with us Colonel S.M. Kumar, the co-founder and managing director of MitKat. He is a military veteran. I think nobody needs to be introduced to him, but I'll still do the honors.
No,
so he
I'll do it and we'll just finish on time.
Let me do my bit. So he's known as Sam in the consulting industry, a mentor, an entrepreneur, a supporter to everyone, and a speaker of global repute. So over to you, Sam, for the closing remarks.
So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We started on time, we finished on time, nearly a couple of minutes, maybe overshot. So thank you very much. We had over 1,000 registrations, 500 plus attendees from over a dozen time zones, peak attendance of 300, and we entered into the last panel with over 200 and 180 still there. So big thank you to each one of you for your participation, for your remarks, for your comments, feedback, and encouragements, and very sharp questions, and equally intelligent answers. So thank you, Sushil, Kunal, and team for putting it together. Interns from Narsi Monji helped us a lot, particular mention Remya and Jaya Agrawal. Panel 1 moderated by Sushil. I learned a lot. It was on BCM in the workplace. Kundan said, the world has changed. We need to change too. Asia is adapting much faster than the world. This is a golden era for BCM professionals. So our time has come. Thank you to Ascent and congratulations on the new Auto BCM tool. Daman said, no one is zero in resilience. No one is going to be 100. It's a journey from RM
to ERM, to integrated risk management, GRC, BCM, and I missed out few, and then on to organizational resilience. So workplace has become wider. We need to be resilient, and congratulations on joining EY. Niti, workplace are changing. Our attitudes are changing too. Some people like to work from home. Some people like to work from office. Some like a combination. So she said, it's a journey, not a destination. Know your risks, forecast them well, predict, but be prepared for surprises. We need to understand our business very closely. Also need to understand as resilience professionals, environment, health, sustainability, governance, cybersecurity, and the entire ecosystem of things. Funny said, traditional BCM retains its relevance. We need additional systems, processes, technology, and skills, as well as arrangements to secure people, premises, and infrastructure. We need to educate the management so that management and BCM teams both are in sync with the evolving ground realities. Alexander said, shooting in the dark is not a good idea. Make BCM an integral part of the business. Talked about BCM by design at length. And then thank you for a real life and practitioner's perspective and highlighting the need to be prepared from asteroid strikes to moving into geogalactic spaces. So everything else. Sai Chandrasekhar, thank you for the very sharp, and concise comments. You said that you highlighted that we are never adequately prepared. Events will not be sequential. Regulators are becoming more unforgiving and intrusive, and they want to know what we are doing and if we are adequately prepared and our plans and processes are in place. The role description of business continuity or resilience professional has undergone a subtle yet significant change. And we now need a point that Niti highlighted. You re-emphasized, we need intrinsic understanding of businesses, ecosystems, technology, culture, diversity, inclusion, and many more things. BCM is no longer a good to have thing, but a compliance requirement, and we need a holistic and maximal BCM. Panel 2, moderated by my colleague and co-founder Pawan Desai, was on role of technology in BCM. Eugene from Business Continuity Managers Association of Philippines said that BCM is no longer a footnote, but a key agenda point in board meetings. We need to be versatile. We have to be weather experts. We have to be economists, publicists, law enforcers, social media experts. So technology will be a key enabler for BCM. And then you covered much ground from risk management to predictive intelligence tools to look beyond the horizon and around the corners. And finally, you highlighted the need for integrated systems. Then we had Dr. Gaurav, who summed up very well, reimagine the future of work and workplace and reimagine resiliency. He talked about the need for plans, processes, and practices and laid out 5 mantras. A is prioritize well. 2 is technology, capability, and capacity. You must be equipped with adequate infrastructure, connectivity, bandwidth, and security. Prepare for life without data centers, and plan for contingency, plan for the Bin Laden model of working, embed security, privacy, and compliance. And finally, automated and adjusted SLAs for contingencies. And I need to communicate it well. Ankit talked about the need for predictive threat intelligence tool. Thank you. I think we provide one of them. And then you saw a nice demonstration of that by Madhura Chanda. He said, leverage technology to do the heavy lifting. Integration, not point solution is the answer. But remember, technology is an enabler, not a silver bullet. Dhaval Kapasi, very soft-spoken, very successful entrepreneur, founder of MReach. If anyone has any questions on emergency and mass notification, please feel free to reach out to him. He reinforced the need for agile, innovative, integrated, customized technologies, and which are in sync with the culture, compliance, organizational needs, and then re-highlighted that one size does not fit all. Madhura, our colleague, gave a lovely demonstration of AI and ML-enabled risk tracker platform. We source data from 3,000 trustworthy sources and then use AI and ML to customize it and generate nearly 10,000 organizational specific alerts, 250 incident advisories every single day with a coverage of 78 countries. So please feel free to reach out to us for any further details. The panel 3 with a lot of heavyweights, a lot of lifetime achievers, and we are humbled. Wasim, Arvi, Agni, all of you are for being on the panel, and then we are especially thankful to the Business Continuity Managers Association of the Philippines and Mel you and Eugene for joining us from Manila. And then we're sure this is just the beginning of our friendship and many more to come. So the third panel was on organization and supply chain resiliency across the Asia Pacific. And so good, lovely opening remarks, Mitesh. I think chicken has got everybody's attention. And Arvi, thank you for taking us through the entire historical evolution of business continuity and up to the post-pandemic era. And thank you for highlighting the need for critical suppliers, for supplier continuity, for embracing digital, and finally summing up with need for chain of command with clear accountability and responsibility and integrating procurement into the overall strategy. Wasim, thank you for summing it up. If I were to sum up, your point in my language, I would say it's the ESG stupid. Break this, keep learning, break the silos, use whole of the organizational approach. I hope I have summed up, Wasim. Multi-pronged approach to vendor risk management, also something that RV and had said about, and you had said about fourth party and fifth party risk managements also. Agni said that today's disruptions are going to be digital in nature. Digital transformation will be the key. He talked about sustainable resilience. Digital resilience is not only an IT activity. You need a new age, more holistic digital resilience, including all in your entire ecosystem. And it will be relevant both for the born in the cloud companies as well as those migrating to the cloud. And then believe you me, it looks like that cloud adoption is worldwide, but it's just 10 to 15%. And the game has just begun. And mobile only and cloud generation will completely shift the world. And Sushil, I'm just about to finish because it'll be unfair if I don't take out the, Mel's summary. So once again, big thank you to BC Map for the great support through the event. And you talked about the world in geopolitical recession, from big power trade wars to war in Ukraine. And thank you for the lovely statistics, 60% of world population or 4.8 billion in Asia. And if I can add, Asia was always historically the center of gravity. Even till 1820, 60% of the global commerce was Asia, global GDP. So just 200 years is a small time in history. And again, Asia will reclaim, it's already 43% of global GDP. So food, fertilizer, medicine, energy, we are all doing well, but Asia is quite resilient. It's not a monolith. Every country has got its own unique peculiarities. And I think your final comment, if I were to summarize in my words, together we win. Okay. So thank you very much. And finally, your thing on trust. So I think trust is central to all we do. And the world will not be in a geopolitical recession if people start trusting their governments and governments start trusting each other. So with it, all good things must come to an end. So big thank you, everyone. Once again, my personal gratitude to all the esteemed panelists, the participants, everyone else who helped in organizing. And then a big thank you to 500 of you who turned up today, and then 200 of you, and about 150 of you who are still stayed on. So love you guys. So thank you very much, and over to Sushil.
Thank you so much, sir, for that excellent summary and for capturing the entire event so beautifully. Without any further ado and without holding people back, I would just like to close on a thank you note to everyone, our participants, all those who listened so carefully, and more important, our valued partners. So Ascent Risk and Resilience, and Kundan represented them as the founder. Emreach and Dhaval represented Emreach as the founder. Business Continuity Managers Association of Philippines, where Eugene and Mel were with us. Thank you so much, folks, for being with us. And last but not the least, ACES Bangalore chapter with Saurabh Srivastav and Sujoy, who supported us and who have also offered all ACES members to provide CPE credits for actually attending this event. So thank you very much. Have a good day and see you at the next event very soon. Before I forget, please don't forget to follow us and read what we have for you on our social media handles, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on LinkedIn. And Kunal has already put our credentials on the chat box, and he's going to do so once more. So those of you who would like to follow MitKat, please do so. And we would be very happy to enjoy your participation in everything that we put up.
Mel raised the hand. So Mel, you want to say something? You want to come in?
I just wanted to say congratulations to MitKat and all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you. And a good day to all of you. Bye-bye. See you at the next event.
Thank you all.